Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Devin Allen, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Devin Allen, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here. She
Gary Dickens, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes quorum.
Thank you. Our invitation today will be delivered by Charlie Pryor from the Calvary Cathedral International. Thank you so much for coming out today.
Thank you for having us. Good morning, Judge and Commissioners and everyone else. On behalf of Pastor Bob Nichols, 55-year pastor here in Fort Worth, Texas, and myself, happy Thanksgiving to you. Father, we come before you. We thank you for this great nation. Father, we thank you for this county. We thank you for our great state and city. I thank you for the county judge and all the commissioners and their staff. Holy Spirit, I ask you to give them wisdom now to do what they need to do, what you want them to do. I ask you to give them understanding of their times, courage, and strength to carry out what you've called them to do. I bless their families. I pray you keep them safe and strong during this time. And I ask for it all, oh God, in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good Thanksgiving.
Same.
Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, today on the agenda, we have just a couple of things we'd like to draw your attention to. The first one is under the administrator section, item A1. We have an additional court communication that we sent out to all the court members last night. It deals with funding related issues and the CARES Act, and we'll be asking you for approval on that particular item whenever we get to that particular item. As you notice that on item number 3, this is a receive and file of the executive order that Judge Whitley is going to issue, and we will make sure that copies are made available to you once we receive the official document. Also, members of the court, as we have done in the past, we're going to take certain things out of order after we get through the consent agenda and move into the reports and businesses. We're going to move directly to the briefing agenda so that Vinny can make his presentation on public health. And then finally, court members, just a note, you'll see on proclamations, resolutions, and presentations, today we're going to honor 3 individuals who are retiring. They were senior managers and have had a significant impact on how this county looks and how it's run over the last 30 years. So I know, Judge, you have some resolutions that you were going to read, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that there will be 3 of those. Mr. Phillips will not be here, though, at this time. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of November the 17th.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Fickus, you need to put your lap. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
And Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. GK mentioned a few minutes ago that we have some people retiring. These people have meant a tremendous amount to Tarrant County for just about as long as I've been a part of Tarrant County. And I cannot even begin to express to them the thanks that this county has for the commitment they made to Tarrant County. And what...
I told him he could always change his mind.
I think we've said that probably to all three of them at one point in time or another. And I think Mr. Phillips, every time he's tried to do it, you found a way to keep him here, so he just didn't show up today. But again, I'm going to read these resolutions, but as I say in many cases, there's a bunch of whereases and there's a therefore, but they can't even begin to express the thanks that we have to each one of these individuals for the way they have conducted themselves, for the way they have represented Tarrant County throughout the time frame that they have been here. We are going to greatly miss them, and I really kind of feel sorry for the people who are going to come in their place, because the expectations are going to be extremely high, and for someone to come into these positions without having had the years of experience that we're going to, that we just naturally are going to accept or expect from these individuals will make it that much tougher on the people who follow them. So with that, I'm going to begin with Jay Singleton. And the other thing, I guess I can't tell you how disappointed I am in the fact that we're doing this in the midst of COVID-19. These retirements are just another bad thing that have occurred within 2020. So Jay, if you will come forward, and if you have anyone here who, if there's someone here, well, I mean, we can't get most of the people in here that would be. I mean, this room would be standing room only, packed.
I told them not to come.
Well, and I understand that, and I very much regret that had to happen, but I also understand where we are in this situation. Whereas Jay Singleton joined Tarrant County as its first assistant county administrator in May of 1999, and whereas Jay began his career in local government as an intern and budget analyst in the city of Lubbock, and he continued to serve in several municipal positions, including budget officer at the city of Abilene, budget director for the city of Garland, and city manager at the city of Crowley, before joining Tarrant County's administrator's office. And whereas throughout his years of service with Tarrant County, Jay has coordinated, developed, and assisted with numerous programs and policies touching most every function of county government, including budget, human resources, emergency services district, community service functions, commissioners court, facilities, county courts, public health, HIV service, intergovernmental relations, and many more. And whereas throughout his 40-year career in local government, Jay has always been a steady and respected leader and is recognized throughout his profession for his integrity and commitment to public service. And whereas on November the 30th, 2020, Jay will retire from Tarrant County after 21 years of invaluable service, now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby recognize Jay Singleton for his years of exemplary service to the citizens of Tarrant County, in witness whereof we have herein to set our hands and cause the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 24th day of November 2020. I'll move its approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes, I guess.
You always got to listen to the rookies. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Pickens, if you would like to join, you're welcome to do that. I wish all five were able to be here at this time, but such is not the case. GK can join if you'd like to. Yes, very much I would like for GK to be a part of this.
thank you for the recognition. I swore I wasn't going to get teary, but I am.
Well, I got teary-eyed almost in reading and just talking about the three of you beforehand.
I wish I knew that guy you talked about. I've had the great opportunity over the last 40 years to do a lot of things. I tell people I've done everything from A to Z, airports to zoos. I've touched them all, and it's been a great, great experience. One of the things that I want to recognize today is a lady named Marita Harmon. She hired me for my first 2 jobs. Was a great leader. Unfortunately, she passed away. Last week, I sent an email to Larry Cunningham, who some of you know I worked for 40 years ago, former city manager of North Richland Hills. He hired Rita and promoted her to personnel director, then an assistant city manager. And she then hired me, 2 different promotions. And she is my number one, and I've always reflected back to her. Well, I want to thank the Commissioners Court, past and present, and department heads, elected officials that we've worked with. I want to thank the administrator staff, especially GK and his inspiration and trust. We've counseled each other over the years, and it's been very special to me. And like I said, I want to thank the administrator staff, both the present staff and most of the previous staff. We'll leave that there. Thank you very much for this honor, and I'm thankful that, unlike some people, I'm very fortunate to be able to step away and still be comfortable, and always think about those that are not. So, thank you.
Thank you again very much, Jack. Jack Beecham. I'm going to miss Jack because then I won't have anybody to razz during football season. And, you know, I thought this year, okay, he's going to go out on a winning note, but, you know, I guess I paid the referees enough because they were the worst set of referees I've ever seen.
Get what you pay for.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to read this resolution into the record. Jack Beecham began his career with Tarrant County as purchasing agent in January of 1996. And whereas Jack's early career in local government started in the city of Irving in May of 1977, where he was quickly recognized for his skills and efficiency. And whereas in January of 1982, he took the role of purchasing agent with the city of Carrollton, where he used his expertise to develop the first policies and procedures manual for the city. And whereas through hard work and with great success, Jack accepted the role of Tarrant County purchasing agent in January of 1996 and has never looked back. And whereas Jack is respected and recognized throughout the county for his work ethic and commitment to serving the citizens of Tarrant County, and leaves a legacy as Tarrant County employee who always maintained the highest standards and integrity. And whereas on November 30th, 2020, Jack will retire from Tarrant County with over 24 years of invaluable service. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby recognize Jack Beecham for his years of exemplary service to the citizens of Tarrant County. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 24th day of November 2020. I'll move its approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Allen.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Purchasing board member, would you like to?
Absolutely.
I asked the University of Arkansas football team to accompany me, but they're quarantined as we speak due to COVID. I'd like to thank Sharon Wilson, Commissioner Johnson. Sharon was the purchasing board chairman. JD was and still is on the purchasing board 24 years, 11 months ago. I don't think everybody has the opportunity to have a job where you feel like you can make a difference. I've had that dream job. I never thought about retiring. Didn't have time. We were too busy. Those that follow me will still be real busy. We've done it the right way. To most of the department heads in Tarrant County, I do have a heart. My cardiologist told me I did. But we did it the right way. I feel like we've been totally transparent with past and present commissioners' courts, purchasing boards. Everybody wants their stuff. There's a way to get your stuff. The way to get your stuff is to do it the right way. I would challenge everybody in the county to realize that there are processes for everything we do in this county. Respect everyone's processes. Life's pretty good if you learn to do that. Things aren't simple. Everything is complicated with COVID and just business and life in general. But we did it the right way. I told the sheriff's chaplain one time, I said, I kind of feel like I'm a man of the cloth. I'm trying to save these poor souls from themselves every day. Some days it felt like that. But I had the opportunity to do it the right way. You allowed us to have many firsts in the purchasing profession in the state of Texas. The list goes on and on and on. But you allowed us to do that. You allowed us to do our job, and you had our back. And I'm forever indebted for that. Best job I've ever had. I wish I'd have gotten here quicker. But the county's fine. The county will be fine long after all of us are gone somewhere else. I did the math. I think I mentioned that last week. I walked down the aisle 1,250 times. This is the toughest walk today. But I thank you all. I'll miss the personal relationships. I'll miss the daily challenges. I said no a lot, but I also said yes a lot. And again, we weren't in the newspaper. We were never sued. In the purchasing department, we had 7 bid protests in 25 years. That's huge. That is just huge. You spend a lot of time on the front end and do it the right way, or a lot of time on the back end sweeping up the glass shards. David and I will come back, have breakfast on a Tuesday, sit in the back row and fill out an audience participation form.
And you will be given 3 minutes to speak.
Subject
for
to
at least 1 year.
Subject to be determined. Like you guys always tip me off as to what you're going to ask me, let me talk about every day. Honestly and sincerely, thank you from the bottom of my heart. It has been a pleasure. I've been so proud to be the purchasing agent for Tarrant County. God bless you all.
Next is David Phillips, as Mr. Manius indicated. David is not here today, but we're going to read this into the record anyway. Whereas David Phillips began his employment with Tarrant County as Chief Building Engineer on September the 4th, 1990. And whereas David's early private sector experience in HVAC services provided him the foundation that propelled him to a 30-year career with the Tarrant County Facilities Management Department. And whereas after 14 years of hard work, education, and great success at Tarrant County, David was promoted to the role of Director of Facilities Management in May of 2004. And whereas David is respected and recognized for his innate and proven ability to successfully direct and coordinate numerous new construction projects throughout the years, as well as major renovations to county buildings, including the historic courthouse, and to seamlessly provide for the management and maintenance of a campus of over 60 facilities at multiple locations throughout the county, more than double the number of buildings from his start date in 1990. And whereas David leaves a legacy as a county employee who has always maintained the highest standards in his work ethic, integrity, and commitment to Tarrant County and the over 130 employees he manages in his department. And whereas on November the 30th, 2020, David will retire from Tarrant County with over 30 years of invaluable service, now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby recognize David Phillips for his years of exemplary service to the citizens of Tarrant County, in witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 24th day of November, 2020, and I'll move its approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Combined, that's 75 years of invaluable service to the citizens of Tarrant County. Again, we're going to miss these individuals. I can understand coming back, and heckling your replacements from the peanut gallery. And I hope y'all will do that. We appreciate, again, very much the service. Commissioner Allen.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to overtalk. I did just want to add that I appreciate having learned from each of the three individuals that we're recognizing this morning. I do wish them the best in their retirement and whatever next is coming for them. I did in particular want to thank Jay for always being a valuable resource of information, balanced information with very little opinion or editorializing, and I appreciate that. He certainly is a leader's leader without a doubt. I do have to say to Jack that his reputation preceded him. So during the time between when I was elected and when I was sworn in, I sat down to meet with him. He gave me his book of purchasing rules and regs and said, read it, understand it, let me know if you have questions. I didn't have any questions. It was pretty thorough, and thankfully I never ended up having to pay for something because we didn't handle things the right way. So hopefully that will continue. So I thank you, Jack, for that. And then lastly, for David, in his absence, I appreciate him for always being a great resource and for leading us all through. Everyone has certainly done a tremendous amount of work with this pandemic, but we know that facilities and purchasing, and they have just taken a very heavy load as others have. So I just want to thank you all. I still have your cell numbers, and so even though you're retired, I may need your advice, and I'm going to call you. Congratulations.
Any other comments at this time? Commissioner Fickus, I believe you have a congratulatory resolution also.
I do. It is for acknowledgement only, and I'll be able to present it on Tuesday night. It's a congratulatory resolution to Mayor Pat McGrail with the City of Keller. Pat has served for over 3 decades, and we will acknowledge that on Tuesday. So I'll move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Court members, you have before you our consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Now, for those, we've got refreshments back here for Dak and for David and for Jay. So if some of the folks, some of our employees want to filter back there and razz them a little bit or eat some of the stuff, then we can do that. And looks like Natalie's fixing to bring me my audience participations.
And I do have a few announcements, Judge.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yes. One, just a reminder to everyone that today is the second day of early voting for the runoff election. I know there are a number of runoff elections throughout the county, in particular in Precinct 2. If you are an Arlington resident, a Mansfield ISD resident, or a City of Mansfield resident, that there are elections on your ballot. So do please participate in the runoff election. And certainly after what we experienced during the general and joint elections in Mansfield, is working with the elections administration and folks in Mansfield to have a second location for early vote. So in addition to the Mansfield Sub-Courthouse, there is also the Vernon Newsom Stadium. So please do make sure that you make your voice heard in this runoff election. Second is I wanted to be sure to share that next week, Thursday, December 3rd at 6:30 p.m., we will be hosting a teletown hall on our rental assistance program. I know there's been a tremendous work with all of our CARES Act programming or pillars, and we posted a series of teletown halls and Facebook Lives regarding that to make sure we're doing everything we can to get the word out. So we will be having a town hall next Thursday, December 3rd at 6:30 p.m. Regarding the rental assistance program. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Manius.
Your Honor, we can now go to the briefing item and receive the update, the public health update. I'm going to ask Mr. Tenage to come forward and start that presentation.
Good morning, Your Honor, and members of the court. We'll go over our public health briefing. And as you know, hospitalizations have been trending upwards in all of TSAE, which covers North Texas pretty much. Tarrant County, again, we're going to report about 1,700 or so cases this morning. We're above 94,000 cases, 835 deaths. I believe that's 5 new deaths to report today. And Tarrant County hospitals, and I'll explain the numbers a little bit. From what we see, they're at about 16.78% occupied with COVID. That's compared to total available capacity. So they're above the 15% mark. And the report that we review has showed starting yesterday evening that TSAE is above 15%. They're at 15.21%. Problem is, the state data somehow is not showing that. I believe there might be a lag on how they capture the information. So they're showing we're at 13.8%, and that's below the 15% threshold. So that's from DSHS. The difference might be we are looking at 2,356 hospitalizations on the report that we review. The state might be running a day behind. They're at 2,297. So that might explain what the difference is between those. So that's from a hospitalization standpoint. Of course, nothing major has changed. ICU utilization, I looked at it, still at about 92% out of total ICU capacity in Tarrant County. About 40% of those were COVID related. About 168, I think, in ICU that are COVID related, and about, I want to say 36 beds remaining, again, on the ICU capacity in Tarrant County. Here's the hospital trends for Tarrant County. Again, we've exceeded, the July peak. This data is from yesterday. This morning's report, I think we're going to add another maybe 15 or 20, so we're at like 804 hospitalized in Tarrant County that are COVID positive. And then here's case trends. So as you can see on the epi curve, we've certainly exceeded our July peaks, and the new peaks are looking much bigger. We've had that, several weeks in a row, but the last couple of weeks have been real rough. But the chart to the right, I wanted to share something interesting that our staff dug up the other day. We're at 90,000 cases, and they sort of plotted it at every 10,000 and how many days it took to get there. What was interesting was that the first 10,000 cases took 107 days to happen in Tarrant County. And as you recall, early on, we had all kinds of mitigation measures in place, stay at home, a variety of other things. So it definitely worked. And the last 10,000 cases just took 7 days. So that's quite a bit of acceleration that we've seen. And throughout the way, if you notice, where we had mitigation measures added, things did slow down. So things were accelerating into July, and as mask orders came out, reductions in the restaurant capacity and closing of bars happened, it slowed down quite a bit. It took almost 35 days to add 10,000 cases when that slowdown of COVID activity was happening. So certainly mitigation strategies have value. They've shown to work, even in our data. And then the case trends on the positivity rate, we're at about 14%. Recently, we were as high as 16%, so it's trended down a little bit over the last week or so. So that's good news, but that means there's more work to be done, more testing needs to happen. Certainly, there's disease out there that's being found. So that's about 1 in 6, maybe 1 in 7 people coming back positive on the testing. And the COVID-19 mortality data is starting to catch up. As we know, when you have a surge, it takes a while for people to be hospitalized. Some are not fortunate; they end up dying. That number is starting to tick up. It's not as bad as what we saw in July, but certainly we're seeing an uptrend in the mortality data as well. COVID-like illness, again, is at or above July levels at about 6.4% of the visits in the ER setting are related to COVID-like illness. And then here's our message for the holidays. I mean, nothing really has changed from the last week, so the message remains the same, that we as a county need to work together to bend this curve. We laid out a Protect Tarrant County plan, which was a non-binding guidance document. It's posted on our website, so I urge Tarrant County residents to follow that advice. It hinges heavily on having a safe and happy virtual Thanksgiving. Celebrate with your own household. I know it sounds very awkward that we're not going to be able to visit with family. We got to put them on a computer, do a Zoom call or FaceTime with them. But that's the safest way this year, given the backdrop of data that we have. We just can't afford more outbreaks. If people don't believe, they just need to pick up the newspaper. There's story after story after story of Tarrant County families who had a birthday party, who attended a funeral, who went to a wedding, ended up with a COVID outbreak, and more people in the hospital, more deaths occurring. I know a particular family, mom and dad died, leaving an 11-year-old alone in Tarrant County. Those are real people with a real impact with COVID. So people really need to take this seriously. And one of the best things they can do is wear a mask everywhere. When you're around people outside of your immediate household, wear a mask. And there's a lot been said, where's the proof? Well, the proof is here. CDC did release a study most recently. As you'll recall, in July, as cases were surging, a lot of states and a lot of governors issued face mask orders. And CDC studied a particular state of Kansas, and they found that there were, the governor issued a masking order, but in their state law, local counties were allowed to decide whether they choose that or not and follow through. And 24 of the counties decided to issue their own face mask mandates to follow with the governor's order, and 81 counties chose not to. And the data is very clear. The counties that actually did the face mask mandate saw a reduction in COVID-19 cases, and those that did not saw almost a doubling of COVID-19 cases over the next few weeks. So I've posted the link to the CDC study. It's in the MMWR weekly report. And, you know, a lot of the summary details are here. It kind of covers how they did the study and what all they found. But the public health implication is very clear, that face masks work. Community level strategies combined with face masks. So social distancing, staying at home when people are ill, and enhanced hygiene practices all reduce the transmission of COVID-19. So here's our data sources if anybody wants to go click on them later and read on their own time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions or clarify any information.
Any questions for Vinny?
Yeah, Vinny, I've gotten this question quite a bit, and so I imagine if I have others have it, if you could just share. You know, people are saying, you're asking, well, doesn't more testing mean that that would be more positive, right? So that actually there isn't, you know, will you just kind of talk through that, that yes, we have an increase in testing, but that's not the reason for the more positive results? Absolutely, Commissioner. Thank you. I get that question a lot as well. So the common sense answer to that is testing is a case finding tool. So what it does is it allows us to find the cases that are already happening in our community. Not testing is not the answer, and blaming testing for more cases is just twisting the data, because the cases are already out there, whether you test them or not. Those are folks already sick. Just because you tested somebody is not making them sick or positive for the results. We're finding people that are positive because they were already sick, and they were sick enough to care to go get a test. So that's sort of a, you know, I don't know how that idea got brought around. Not finding the information and not looking for what's happening in our community is burying your head in the sand. I just don't have a better way to say it.
And I would remind everybody to please be wearing their masks over their nose and mouth while they're in here this morning. Any other questions for Vinny? Thank you, Vinny.
Thank you.
Mr. Manius, I don't know where we are I would like at this time, if you would not mind, to ask the district attorney to come up. Last week we asked them to prepare a presentation on exactly where we are with regards to the orders, and I know we're going to be very quickly talking about the emergency declaration as well as the mask order. And if that's okay, I would like to ask Chris to come forward at this time and make his presentation. And in regard to the, well, let's go through that presentation, because I have a couple of audience participations that want to talk about restaurants and bars, and I plan on taking those as soon as you get finished with this.
And just a note for the clerks, this is covered under items 1, 2, and 3 on the administrator's section.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, Judge, Commissioners. As Judge Whitley said, he asked our office to prepare a presentation and to basically discuss an overview of the state of the regulations as it pertains to COVID-19 response, where we are from a legal perspective. With that said, I have a handout for you, Judge, if I may approach.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Allen, I believe that this presentation was emailed to you as well. And with kind of starting to give an overview of where we are from a legal perspective, what orders are in place, and what actually is active, I'm going to start with the governor's orders and then kind of talk about the limited power that the county judge has and this court has. But to start, I want to start with Governor Abbott's Order 32, commonly referred to as GA 32. That order starts by giving a general rule. It says that business entities throughout the state can only have 75% occupancy. So that limits all the business entities throughout the state at 75%, and that comes directly from the governor. Now, this number is subject to change, and what it bases the change on is whether the county is in an area with high hospitalization. So it uses this term, and GA 32 defines it as any trauma service area that there's 7 consecutive days in which the number of COVID-19 patients that are in the hospital exceeds 15% of the hospital capacity for that trauma service center. So to clarify, it's not the number of the hospital capacity for the county we look at, is for the entirety of the trauma service center. Tarrant County is located in Trauma Service Center E, or was commonly referred to as TSAE. There's 19 counties within there. Dallas is included. So you have to look at the entirety of that TSA or TSAE to determine whether there is a change in the 75% occupancy or how that affects GA 32 and the orders within GA 32 on whether you're in an area with high hospitalization. So we also provided a link so you can monitor that yourself. You can also provide the link to the public. Everyone can monitor whether we exceeded that percentage for 7 consecutive days. That's what you have to look at is TSAE. Now, I wanted to begin to discuss what would happen if TSAE was to be or be determined to be in an area of high hospitalization. At that point, some certain things in GA 32 kicks in. The first thing that happens is the mandatory 75% occupancy drops to 50% occupancy. So any business in which, if we are determined to be in an area of high hospitalization, which we're not there yet, but if it does occur, then any business that continues to operate at the 75% occupancy level would be in violation of GA 32, the governor's order. The other thing that's important to point out is neither the commissioner's court nor the county judge has any authority to grant exceptions to that. So that's set by the governor. It removes the authority from the local entities, and he set that within GA 32. It's also important to note that GA 32 requires every person, businesses, individuals, and other legal entities, to use good faith efforts to follow the minimum standard health protocols recommended by DSHS or DSHS. DSHS issued an industry-specific protocol, so protocol for bars, protocol for restaurants, in order to safely operate. And GA 32 simply reminds us that, or these entities, that they should attempt to follow the DSHS specifically industry-specific health protocols when operating.
Because I want to, so no, go ahead, and I'll ask my question in a minute.
So now I want to talk about the impact that would occur with bars if we were to enter into an area or become an area of high hospitalization. So as it operates today, the bars can operate at 50% occupancy. Now there's one of two things that could occur to, in effect, shut the bars down. The first of which is if we do become, or if TSAE becomes an area of high hospitalization, at that point, the bars must close. They're not able to operate. They'll be operating in violation of the governor's order if they were to do that. The second thing is GA 32 gives the authority to the county judge to determine, to revoke the form that was submitted to the TABC allowing the bars to operate. So the two things that could occur is either TSAE becomes an area of high hospitalization, or the county judge, in his authority, decides to revoke that form submitted to the TABC. It's one of the few things that the county judge can do to affect the COVID-19 response right now.
And I would just, at this point, would like to make this thing, because a lot of people have said, well, you know, you've talked about these bars that are abusing the rules, and what I reminded them of is, no, those bars drove through a big loophole that allowed them to become classified as restaurants.
and that a number of the bars, I met with a number of them when the governor first gave us the authority to allow the bars to open. They were abiding by the rules and had stayed closed. But the places that we've seen many times pointed to as poor examples were the ones that had driven through that loophole of 51% food sales, some of them by taking the $3 drink that they used to sell, selling the drink for $1, but requiring them to buy a $2 bag of chips to go along with that drink. So I have not chosen to reclose the bars because I believe if I do that, the ones that are abusing it will still be open under the definition of a restaurant. And I'll just say that to say that. Yeah,
and I think that's an important distinction, Judge, because the TABC sets what is a bar and what is a restaurant. And, of course, this court or yourself does not have the authority to kind of set that determination. So if an entity is operating as a restaurant and meets the requirements, that whether they are properly operating or not, if you were to decide to revoke that form to the TABC and to shut down the bars, if they're still a restaurant under the TABC rules, then it doesn't affect those entities. And so those are the two ways that bars are affected. If there is an area high hospitalization, of course they shut down, and the judge has the authority to revoke the TABC form as well.
And before you go into that next area, what I wanted to clarify was there's been some confusion with regards to the occupancy and how these things are, and I apologize because you and I have talked about this, and this question did not come to my mind until as you were making this presentation. So I apologize for hitting you kind of out of right field on this, but the governor's order says 75% occupancy. It would go to 50% occupancy, but his order says nothing about social distancing within that occupancy requirement. It's not 50% occupancy and social distancing. It is 50% occupancy, which says that they take whatever the formal occupancy is that has been set for that establishment is. They determine that if it happens to be 50, then they can put the 50 in there however they can best put it in there, but they don't have to at the same time adhere to the 6 feet social distancing between tables or things along that line.
There's two things to that issue, Judge. First, you are correct that GA 32 doesn't specifically address whether the social distancing requirements within the business entities, but what it does do is it points to owners of these business entities to DSHS to look at their industry-specific protocols. So it provides a link in GA 32 so the business owners can go, and I believe there's a checklist that they can review to determine whether they're operating within the suggested requirements for operating that specific industry bar or restaurant or whatever that entity is.
But it says that you should try to. Where is the reference to the DHS?
So in GA 32,
okay, your last point on slide 2, DHS has issued industry-specific protocols, and the governor has consistently urged, not required, urged compliance with these protocols.
Yeah, and absolutely, the governor has not specifically said you must do this. It's pointed them to DSHS. DSHS provides them a kind of suggest best practices.
Best practices,
yeah.
But the occupancy is specifically required.
The occupancy is specifically required, yes, sir.
Okay, I just wanted to stress, occupancy required, social distancing urged.
Absolutely.
Just to clarify, the occupancy is up to 75%. It does not mean that they have to operate at 75%.
I understand, but they can't exceed the 75%, but they're urged
with regards to the social distancing. So they can go up to 75% and not comply with the 6 feet social distancing.
Yes, if you go look at the checklist for restaurants, it does specifically state, it encourages them to be 6 feet apart.
I like the word encourages.
I understand.
It doesn't say shall nor require.
That is correct. And it does also state some examples of when tables can be within 6 feet of each other, such as 4 feet apart, if they use some other mechanism by which to do protection, such as a partition.
Right,
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Judge.
Now moving on to the hospitalization.
Yes, the next one, and we move on to the governor's second order that's still in effect, which is GA 31. That deals with hospital capacity. The first point from GA 31 is, regardless of whether you're in an area of high hospitalization or not, as we sit today, the hospitals must reserve 10% of their capacity for treatment of COVID-19 patients. So that is regardless of whether you have area of high hospitalization. So we have to do that now. Now the change is if TSAE ever becomes an area of high hospitalization, some surgeries and procedures are required to be postponed unless the performance of that surgery or procedure will not deplete the hospital capacity needed to cope with COVID-19. So you have some of these elective surgeries that will have to be postponed, and need to be some changes if, once again, TSAE reaches that level.
Okay. Now the fun one.
Yes, the final aspect is talking about the mask orders from the governor and the mask order that's currently in place from the county. And it's important to note that there are 2 separate and distinct mask orders in existence right now that covers Tarrant County citizens. The first of which I'll talk about is Governor Abbott's order, GA 29. Now, his order requires individuals throughout Texas to wear a face covering over the nose and mouth when in public, wherever it is not feasible to maintain 6 feet of social distancing from another individual not in the same household. So GA 29 specifically is the one that addresses people in public throughout the state. The one in which that basically states if you're not able to stay within 6 feet, then you should wear a face covering over your mask and nose. The second one that is important to note is the one that's in place issued by yourself, Judge Whitley. That particular mask order only hits local businesses, and it basically requires local businesses to issue a health and safety plan that, within that plan, at a minimum, requires people to wear masks while in that entity. And so only on business premises, only affecting the businesses. That order does not affect the individuals per se. It's issued directly for the business entities doing business here in Tarrant County.
And if they have customers that come into their businesses, it applies. If they have outdoor patio, I don't believe it applies to outdoor.
I'll have to look at your order, Judge, and I'm not sure if that applies to outdoors. I know that the restaurants I've seen has required you, of course, when you're up and walking around,
yes,
to wear a mask. But if you're sitting down eating, then which is also an exception in the governor's order as well. If you're sitting down eating or consuming food or consuming drink.
And we focused on this. We focused on restaurants and we focused on those types of things when we talk about that. But if you're in any business, if you go into a hardware store or if you go into the grocery store or whatever, that same mask mandate is in place. And in those situations, you should be wearing the mask at all times because the mask does not interfere with eating, nor does the mask, another one is if you go to a barber shop or something like that, well, the mask impedes that, so you could take the mask off at that point in time. But when you're in just a normal store, you should still be wearing the masks from that standpoint.
Yes, the face covering orders specifically say business entities. It does not particularly say restaurants or bars. So if you're going to say a Lowe's or any other business, it would cover within that circumstance as well.
Thank you.
So I wanted to kind of highlight kind of what authority from a legal perspective right now that the county judge has or this court may have, and there's really kind of three things that come to mind that you're able to actually do now. This is pursuant to 418 of the government code, but also the governor's orders and suspensions. You're of course able to require the businesses to implement the safety policy, which is what you're doing now. That's number one.
And that's my responsibility.
That is your responsibility, yes, Judge.
The court basically issues the declaration of an emergency.
Absolutely.
Which then allows me to issue certain orders from that perspective for as long as that declaration of emergency is in place.
That's correct. You have the authority to issue the declaration. The court as a whole can either strike that declaration down as far as not renewing it, but as far as the executive orders, that's at 418, that's resigned directly for you.
And they have, so like in the very beginning, I issued the order of emergency declaration. The court has a certain amount of time, is it 7 days?
7 days, yes, sir.
In which to agree with that, and at that point in time, they can extend it for as long as 90 days.
Yes.
And so that's what we did in the beginning, as I issued the emergency declaration. The court the next Tuesday came back. They ratified that declaration and extended it for some period of time. And then since then, we have extended it again up through November the 30th, and today we're considering an additional extension at this point in time.
Yes, and 418 is silent on actually how long the court can extend that declaration. I believe it was the decision of this court to do that for a 90-day period.
Okay.
The second item that, as far as your authority as county judge, you may, of course, may revoke the TABC form submitted to allow bars to operate. And the third item is regulating outdoor gatherings in excess of 10 people in the unincorporated area of Tarrant County. Other than that, those are the only three items in which the county judge has authority under the rubric of the governor's regulations right now.
And so regardless of whether it's the governor's regulation or whether it's mine, I can issue the mandate or the order, but that's where at that point in time, it then becomes the responsibility of law enforcement to basically enforce that. That's not my, that's not in my lane, and nor is it in the governor's lane, really. He issues the orders, I issue a mandate or an order. It then passes to law enforcement to enforce that order.
As far as an enforcement perspective, that is correct. The separation of power, so to speak, is you issue the mandate, but the enforcement is not necessarily within your realm.
Okay. Is that it?
And that's it, unless you have any other questions.
I have two people who wanted to speak specifically with regards to restaurants and bars. Leslie, would you like to?
Yes. I would just like to address a couple of things that came up in Vinny's presentation on the percentages. As Vinny was saying, he has access to some numbers that are not publicly available. And so he showed a slide for DSHS, which shows that the numbers are trending around 13.5% for the last 7 days. For business owners who are monitoring that is the only resource that we are aware of that is publicly available for business owners to monitor so that they know whether or not they're operating in compliance with the governor's GA 32. Vinny is going to continue to work to determine whether or not the information that he gathers that may be more accurate and not lag behind, it can be made available to the public, but at this point in time, that is not the case. And
that is by state law.
Well, he gets his information from a resource that I don't know if you have to pay for it, but it is something that he receives information from because of his position as the public health director. But it's not a website that the public can just go on to see, hey, what is TSA-E's hospitalizations today?
So it's one that he reads but has not sent something on. Where I'm getting at is anything that is sent to us becomes public record and is, somebody can ask for it and we give it to them.
Absolutely.
But what you're saying is this is a site that he has to log into, or may have to log into, but it's not readily available to everyone.
That is correct. And so for business owners who are trying to be responsible and monitor whether or not we are approaching the 15% for 7 consecutive days, and therefore whether or not an adjustment has to be made on their occupancy, the most responsible thing that we have that is publicly available and that the governor's office has directed us to use is that DSHS website that Chris was speaking about earlier. We are going to put that link somewhere, is my understanding, so that the public can monitor what DSH numbers are. We can't control if the DSH numbers are 100% accurate. But for business owners who are trying to be responsible, they have to have some resource to look at to determine, have we hit an area, are we now in an area with high hospitalizations? And so until that changes and until we are directed, until we have another resource to direct business owners to look to, then I didn't want there to be confusion, because in Vinny's presentation it said that TSAE has exceeded 15%. But according to the website that the governor's office has directed to be utilized to track these different trauma area regions, it says that they're trending around 13.5%. It hasn't even hit 14%.
Well, I didn't hear him say that TSAE had already, I thought I heard him say that TSAE had not exceeded 14% thus far.
One of his slides, I'll let you address.
So the report that I was referring to, Your Honor, is the RAC report that we all get in our emails. So that has actually started showing since yesterday that TSAE actually is above 15%. I think it was 15.21. But, there's a lag, I believe, on the DSHS website. So if that's the official source, that's the official source. We'll continue to see if there's any way to publicly share that data. At this point, the report reads itself, it's confidential, not for public distribution. So, we get snippets out of it and share if we can, but, official source remains DSHS.
I think if that's the case, if we can, my preference would be to not use the RAC report because I think it confuses folks.
Sure.
And for us to go with whatever the DHS number is, because now what we've got, I can understand two. One from Tarrant County, one from some source, but it really ought to be the source that's going to close down and not the source that, well, it's not really the source that closes down, but it's a source. So think about that. Let's talk about whether legally we can display that every day. And if we can, then let's look toward doing something along that line.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. Honestly, it has been confusing, and certainly I want to make sure that we're communicating what's accurate, but then also what is going to be like the triggering point for those who are following the numbers. So I certainly will be curious to see how that proceeds.
Sure.
This is the reason why I asked the DAs to prepare this, because I think there is a lot of confusion out there, and I want to, as much as possible, explain, what lanes we're in and who can do what, so that we're not, speculating, and that we're staying with what's in place at this point in time, doing what we can do at this point in time.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. Appreciate it. Now, I have two, as I said, I have two audience participations. The first is John Bonnell. Please come forward and just state your name. 3 minutes to make any comments you wish to make.
Hi, I'm John Bonnell, chef and owner of the Bonnell's Restaurant Group. I want to take you back to a really difficult day for all of us in my industry. I am informally and unofficially speaking on behalf of the independent restaurants of Fort Worth right now. March 18th of 2020 was one of the most difficult days of my life. You told us we had to close. The city, then the county, then the governor told us that we were no longer allowed to be in business doing what we do. There was not a single position of bartender, server, wait staff, hostess, wine steward, coat check in the state of Texas. We all scrambled and we grasped at the few straws you left us, putting plastic bags in the trunks of cars at the curbside and parking lots to try to stay in business. It worked for some of us for a while, and for a lot of us it didn't. Just look around downtown at all the holes, all the vacancies of once thriving restaurants. Look at Taverna, look at the Bird Cafe, Cantina Laredo. I can go on, but that list is growing every day. Slowly you allowed us to open with bells and whistles attached. We've tried. We're working on it. We're doing the best we can. We're still grasping at those straws. There is no more catering business. Nobody's getting married and having big weddings. There are no conventions in town. The hotels are still empty. The big office buildings are still almost empty. A few people are going out, and we have done everything we can to abide by your rules, to the health safety protocols. We're the good guys. We have bought more plexiglass, gallons of sanitizer, masks, PPE than you can imagine. Not that we have a lot of extra money laying around, but those are the rules, and so we're doing it. We're trying. We're doing the best we can. I fired 330 people on March 18th. We've gotten just over half of them back. I am asking you, I'm begging you, do not shut us down and make us send everybody back home again. A lot of my colleagues and I will not make it through this if you decide it's time to go back home and just start going with to-go food only. You are crippling an entire industry of small business that relies on this. These are the rules. We have abided by them. We are doing the right thing. If you've got people that are egregiously packing the house, not going by any social standards that we think are smart, not going by any of them, no mask rules, no distancing, throw the book at them, take their liquor license off the wall. They deserve it. The small independents do not. We will go by the rules and we will do what you tell us. We've been doing that. But don't take our only lifeline to survive as an industry away because of a few bad actors. I understand that this is not a hoax. This is not some disease that was made up for political reasons. I can name 11 people that have died from it. I've had it. I've given my own plasma because I have the antibodies 8 times now and I'm still doing it. I get the seriousness of this, but it's not time to take away an entire industry because of it.
Darnell, thank you very much. Again, from the perspective and the reason that I wanted the DA's office to do that, if we hit the 15% DHS number, the occupancy will come down by order of the governor. My goal has been and will continue to be keep hospitals open and don't shut down the businesses. So we've talked before, and that's in part, that is the reason why I have not shut down the bars, is because I think that most of the bars are operating in the manner which was intended. So thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you.
Next is Richard King.
Richard King didn't make it in time, but he would like to reiterate what John Manel just said.
Okay, do you wish to make any comments on his behalf?
Sure.
They're looking at me like maybe I can do that, maybe I can't, but I
tend to only
get up
be the
here
one
and
that
talk quickly before they tell me I can't.
I always tend to be the one that speaks on somebody else's behalf. Karen Johnson, speaking for Richard King. So I guess the confusion is that what we were talking with John Bonnell about earlier is y'all say that there's no mandate for a social distancing while in the restaurants, but he and other restaurants are hearing otherwise, that there is a requirement for social distancing, that there's a requirement for these tables to be social distanced. And so when he's hearing this from somebody, from all these other people, TABC, all these other entities, but y'all are saying that that's not the legal or the mandate, who are they listening to? And if they were to put 75% in and not social distance, would they be shut down by TABC? Who is the controlling entity here?
I have to rely upon our district attorney, whose office is the one that if there's going to be ultimate charges, and some of these orders carry misdemeanor offenses. None of them carry any felony, to the best of my knowledge, and I don't see anybody shaking their head. Yes, they do. She's shaking her head that I'm right. She doesn't do that very often, but every once in a while she does. Now, I know you've still got to argue with code enforcement, but this is the interpretation of the district attorney in Tarrant County, and that's where your business is.
So these restaurants, if approached by TABC saying they're going to shut down because, or take their liquor license away because they're not social distancing the tables, can refer back to this mandate and say that they absolutely are following orders?
Well, the problem with that, I would say to you is that TABC is an arm of the state, and they're probably going to take, I understand, and I'm sorry.
You see what
I see exactly where you're coming from. What I would say is that maybe we'll, she looks at me. Whenever I start to say maybe, she always looks at me. But maybe we could call TABC locally and express at least our position as to why we don't believe the order says that you are required to social distance. You heard me emphasize that as we were going through the process. John, come on back up, because I see you raising your hand back there.
Yes, I was in the meeting when you told everybody that you don't have to socially distance, just mask rule and occupancy, and that's enough. Don't distance your tables. That's not an issue. I have heard the exact opposite from the mayor's office, from fire, from police, from sheriff, from TABC, and from code enforcement. I asked every one of them, do we need to do it? And they said, you do, and we will come and check you. And I have been checked at 3 out of the 4 restaurants by code enforcement. We passed, but they've all said, I don't know what the right answer is. It feels like 6 feet between tables is a lot. That keeps our occupancy at about 50%. No one's getting to 75. But we are doing it voluntarily right now, even though you've told us we didn't have to. We say voluntarily. There are enforcement agencies that are coming by and checking. So
let me just say this to you and anybody else in the restaurant business. I'm going to at least call the mayor. I have talked with other mayors, and she's going to love this statement. I've talked with other mayors who agree with our DA's interpretation. Will y'all call the city attorneys? Yes. They will call the city attorneys. Now, ultimately, past that, I've never been able to convince an attorney to listen to me on legal matters.
God bless you.
But they might listen to them and go over there. But we'll make that clear, because, we've talked about this at length.
I agree, and the law is not my expert area. I'm in my area of expertise in any way. But when the enforcement agencies that come by carrying the clipboard come to check you, we're going to be compliant with what they tell us. They have been coming by and they have been checking.
Okay. Well, let us do some.
That's what gives us our permits and our liquor licenses, and we can't afford to lose either one of them.
Yeah. I will do some checking. I wish I could guarantee you, but this is one area where, again, I'm going to try to stay in my lane, but I'm going to try to help bring other people into my lane with me.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. With that, are we ready to? Well, I've got all these other folks for the mask part, so before I do that, we probably want to go forward with the other briefings, and then, or do you want me to just go ahead and do all the audience participations now, and then we go to the emergency and the mask mandate?
Yeah, let's do the presentations or the comments from the public first.
Okay. Let me begin by saying, as we mentioned last week, we got 36 comments from folks who did not want to address the court but wanted to register their opinions, and we have updated this. It was on our website as of 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and so if anyone wishes to go there and see those comments, they're welcome to do that. We're not reading them. We also have folks who wish to have us call them, and we're going to do that. And then we have in person, and since we've already begun the in person, then I think we'll go forward with that at this time. And we will begin with Zinka Duran, followed by Nancy Groves, followed by Joe Palmer, followed by Doug Hines. So at this time is Zink, and if I'm not pronouncing it, I apologize, but Zinka Duran. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Zdenka Duran. I've never done this before, so this is my first time coming, and it's quite something to be said because it is really important issue when it comes to these mask mandates, because I want to bring a little different perspective and opinion to it. I was born in the 70s in a communist then Czechoslovakia. I'm very familiar with losing freedom to decide what to do with your body and life, as I lived it. At the age of 3 and 5, I was sent to camps for children that doctors decided would be good for me for whatever reason. My doctor decided I was underweight, so they took me from my parents for 2 months at the time to government-run kids camps so they can force feed me. Those camps, not only I was force-fed, I was silenced at night by having a pillow put over my face when about 15 kids in one room cried after their parents. As a mother now, I asked my father, why did he let me go there? And he told me that is what he was told by the doctors, the scientists, and that he was afraid to go against the government recommendation or they would take me away for even longer. Fast forward now, I'm forced to put on a mask on my face that gives me horrible anxieties and brings all those horrors from my childhoods back. Not only masks are proven not to work, per CDC over 70% got infected with COVID that wore masks 100% of the time, and that is a public, and everybody can find that on their CDC website back from July and August. As a medical professional, it pains me to see our rights violated, our disabilities discredited, and our children forced to wear a mask that by the end of the day is dirty and full of bacteria that makes them only sick. My 2 teen kids suffer from severe headaches and congestion that lasts up to 2 hours when they get home and they can finally breathe and take their face mask off. Face masks were never designed to be worn all day long. Everybody says surgeons. No, surgeons will put a sterile mask in a sterile environment on for the duration of operation. Then he himself or she will remove it. These masks, especially cloth masks, are breathing ground for bacteria. It's a common known knowledge and sense, and they were never designed to be put on, especially children, all day long while they sweat and they can breathe, and it's something that is not natural. And I feel like if you vote today, you need to realize that you are playing with people's physical and mental health. And unfortunately, a lot of the disabilities that people like me have are ignored. So
thank you, Mr. Lamb, for coming down today.
That's my thing.
Okay, we don't have the clapping, and we're just going to go through these, and that's the way it's going to be. It's the way it's been since March, and we're going to continue that way. Next is Nancy Groves. Good morning.
Good morning. There is no evidence that masks are beneficial in preventing the spread of COVID-19. Vinny Taneja has yet to cite a valid study that closure of bars or partial closure of restaurants changes the statistics of COVID-19 deaths. Vinny Tenea has yet to cite that 6-foot spacing reduces the spread of COVID-19 by a valid study. The case that he talked about today that the CDC has on their website from Kansas was not a randomized controlled study. It just looked at trends. It looked at counties that enforced mask mandates and counties that did not. There were no controls in that study. Case numbers of the case statistics are meaningless because there is no valid testing for COVID-19. The death rate of the U.S. has not changed this year from previous years. There is a 99.5% overall recovery rate of COVID-19. I'm going to quote from Dr. Roger Hodgkinson. He's a CEO of Western Medical Assessments. He's a certified pathologist from Vancouver, Canada. This is the greatest hoax ever perpetuated on an unsuspecting public. There is absolutely nothing that can be done to contain the virus other than protecting older, more vulnerable people. It should be thought of as nothing more than a bad flu season. This is not Ebola, it's not SARS, it's politics playing medicine, and that's a very dangerous game.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gross. Joe Palmer, followed by Doug Hines, followed by Crystal Latner, I believe. Good morning, sir.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Commissioners. I think that every one of you got into politics to help people, and I don't think it was an easy decision that was made 3/4 of a year ago now to implement the restrictions. But the good news is, with new information, we can go in a new direction. I used to think the word repent meant to feel guilty or to feel remorse about oneself, but it doesn't mean that at all. It's actually based on the Greek metanoia, which means to change one's mind or to elevate one's thinking. I think to change course, to improve course at this time, would not be an admission or acknowledgement that what you did almost a year ago was a mistake. It's just new direction based on new information. The masks are not a preventative. As we know, very unfortunately, our own mayor, Betsy Price, I believe, came down with COVID, and her husband. She was a diligent mask wearer. You go outside, virtually all people are wearing masks, virtually everyone. And so, people can continue to hang on to this thing of blaming the non-mask wearing people for the spread of the disease. But even if that were the case, even if that were proven, that proves that the masks are ineffective. The Kansas study was already mentioned. I would encourage you to delve more into that and look at which counties and look at the other thing is people dying of COVID versus people dying with COVID. I've got to magnify something that was referenced by the public health director. The increased testing is responsible for the increased positive results. The increased testing is what is yielding you the increased positive cases. I can't say that any more clearly. It has to be. In World War II, the engineers for the Army Air Corps looked at where all the planes were getting shot, the planes that were coming back. And they all superimposed them on one image of a plane. And they said, these are the places where the planes need to be reinforced. And one engineer stood up and said, no, you've got it completely backwards. We have to reinforce the planes where these planes have not been shot, because those are the planes that have not come back. We've got to look at this in a new way based on the new information. And I'd like to magnify a couple of other things that were presented in the slide presentation. One is the most dramatic change that I saw of all the charts was the dramatic decrease in the mortality rate. The mortality rate looked to me like it had gone back down to where we were at the very beginning of this thing. The mortality rate. That's what caused us to freak out in the beginning, understandably. Like I said, you're making decisions to help people and to protect the health. And we can go back and forth all day long on to what extent the county is responsible for my health decisions. We can go back and forth on that all day long. But the fact is the mortality rate is back down where we can be logical and sane about this thing. Is that my time?
Yes.
I understand you want to guide and advise people. I think that's great. gas pumps, point of sales at the stores. I think we could improve on that. But the economy is not something that is to be put on a shelf until we figure out what else is going on. The economy is the circulatory system of a society. The Texas Constitution says all free governments are formed by the consent of the governed and are formed for their benefit. Are you benefiting people? Are you benefiting the restaurants?
Thank you, Mr. Palmer.
Thank you. Put the decision back in the hands of the individual head of household business owners.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Mr. Hines, followed by Crystal, followed by Trevor, followed by Troy.
Morning, Judge Whitley, commissioners. First of all, I just got to hand it to Mrs. Arinka out there. That was wherever she is. That was awesome. That was awesome. Good job for standing up for freedom. Good job for telling us what it's going to be like here in the United States if we don't stop this now. I want to talk again about the confusion, the fear I've talked about before when I've addressed the court in the last 2 weeks. Let's not give in to either of these things. One thing we know for sure, and we've been talking about this with other people that have come up here, masks don't work. Quite simple. If they worked, we wouldn't have this right now. We wouldn't have it. You know why? Because your mask mandate, the governor's mask mandate, it's a governor's mandate, and you have the business one, is 99.9% complied with everywhere I go. Everybody's masked up. Everywhere I go. All the time. Point being, if it worked, what's going on now? Let's get the masks off. Let's get the tyranny off. Let's get freedom back. Let's return our constitutional freedoms. Let's return our constitutional liberties. Let's get on with our lives. Let's go back to where we were. Let's bring back our country, bring back our freedom, get rid of this mass hysteria, this dystopian hysteria going on, and get back to freedom. We've got to do it. We've got to do it now. And we've got to have this. Now, let's not forget where we're at here. 71% of those 835 deaths are those 65 or older. And of those, vast majority are over 70, 75. It's called old age, okay? It's the old age disease. 0 people, zero, have died 24 or under. None. 0. Look at your statistics. Wait, DHS statistics, but find them. Your charts, I look at them every week. 0, nada, none. And we're torturing our kids. Let's look at some anecdotal stuff I've talked about here. I've heard. Treating last week, not myself, somebody I know real well got treated in Dallas. The admitting nurse says, oh, by the way, don't ever get a flu shot and don't comply with this stuff. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I thought you said stop. Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought you were looking up something. Don't get a flu shot. Don't live by fear. Just forget all this stuff. It's just, don't trust the government, she said. Don't let she said, she's the treating nurse. The physicians there are telling the nurses to change the charts to add COVID for those that come in with non-COVID conditions. This is a scam. It's been a scam since the beginning. We've got to get back to sanity, get rid of insanity, and bring us back to good reason and good faith in this government. And this mandate. The governor, and you're following with this business thing, are acting outside the constitutional requirements guaranteed to us for the country, the state, and it's out of bounds. We've got to return back to where we are. Please do not renew the declaration of emergency. Get rid of that, and do not extend the mask mandate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Again, if you want to stay in the room, we're not going to do that. If you want to leave the room, then that's fine. Crystal, followed by Trevor, followed by Troy.
Hello. We speak again. We spoke, I don't know if you remember, we spoke for about 30 minutes on the phone September 3rd. After that conversation, we talked about my religious freedom. We talked about how my religious convictions prevent me from compliance with this mask. You agreed to do a Zoom meeting. Teresa called me several times, or actually she called me once. We were trying to confirm a date, and I've called several several times since then to get back on the schedule, on the calendar. I cannot get Teresa back on the phone, and I am no longer been having my phone calls returned, so I got my exemption, and I'm here to talk again about my religious freedom.
Let me just say this about that.
But we are on my time. Are we going to stop the counter?
Stop the counter.
Okay. It was at 2:09?
Stop the counter.
Yes, sir.
I'm not going to even begin to agree with the comments you just made, but I will tell you what. This afternoon at 2:30, we'll have a Zoom meeting. You just stop by the office out there. You give my office the name that we need to reach you at, and we'll have that Zoom meeting this afternoon.
No. The Zoom
you said
meeting.
You wanted a Zoom meeting.
Sir. So, yeah, why don't I call you and just put it at the last minute?
Tell me when you want it.
Okay.
Give me a time of day.
I already was talking to Teresa. My time of day, let's say next Tuesday at 6 p.m.
That'll be fine.
All right, we'll see you there. I'll call her.
You send me the deal, and I will accept the meeting, and we'll go at 6 p.m. next Tuesday.
Thank you so much. Now, I wanted to talk about my religious freedom today because in a country where religious freedom is a thing, where religious freedom is what we were built upon, then we still have to have religious choice. We have the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that talks about religious freedom and what that means. And I don't think I got my 5 seconds back, but freedom of religion or religious liberty is a principle that supports the freedom of an individual or community in public or in private to manifest religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance, and also includes freedom to change one's religious beliefs, religion, or beliefs, the right to profess any religion or belief that is not in practice, or not to practice in a religious, however you are convicted. We have 3 exemptions still in this state, this great state: a medical exemption, a religious exemption, and also an exemption of conscience, meaning what you feel personally convicted about. When we spoke on the phone, you said, well, show me in the Bible, Crystal, where it says you cannot wear this mask. Corinthians 4:1-2 says, since God has so generously let us in on what he is doing, we're about to throw up our hands and walk off the job just because we are not about to throw up our hands and walk off the job just because we run into the occasional hard times. We refuse to wear masks. We refuse to wear masks and play games. We don't maneuver and manipulate behind the scenes, and I believe that there is a huge manipulation happening in our country right now. And whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Muslim, whether you are Jewish, this country protects your rights and your individual beliefs. And at the minute that we lose that, we lose everything. It is protected by religious discrimination in Title 2, 3, and 7 for employers, for public restaurants, for theaters, for governments. I shouldn't have had to get a medical exemption today. My religious convictions and beliefs should have been enough. Whether you are proclaiming Christian and you believe the same way as me or not, or if I am a complete different religion to you altogether, it makes no determination under the Constitution and our Civil Rights Act. We have taken away rules for headscarves in Congress to allow Muslims to wear their headgear, which I agree with everyone. Not just my Christian beliefs should be honored in this great country, great state, and great county. And I will leave you with one final verse that I believe that the Lord put on my heart for you, sir, because I don't know what manipulation is happening behind the scenes. I can't imagine you guys' immense pressure that you're under. But the verse that I got was, and I know my time, Galatians 1:10. And am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. So we have to be very specific in who we are serving, especially if you're proclaiming the name of Jesus Christ. I hear the buzzer.
Yep, your time's up, man. Sorry.
Trevor Armstrong.
Have a great day.
You too. Good morning.
All right. Good morning. My name is Trevor Armstrong. I'm a business owner of 3 different sports organizations here in Fort Worth, and appreciate your time. I appreciate all that you're going through and trying to navigate these waters. I don't envy that by any means. I just wanted to share my thoughts. I've never been here before. I think these times have, given us unique opportunity at the same time. So as much as, we feel cursed during these times, there's also some blessings in there, and I think it's healthy for all of us, and hopefully we're all better for it. The reason what made me come down here today was really to discuss from my perspective when youth sports were brought up in particular. The reason I'm in that business is not solely to be in a business, just that John Bonnell is not in the restaurant business just because, for the money side of things, he's passionate about what he does. We feel the same way. We feel that youth sports taught us when we were youth, how to become good teammates, good leaders, follow direction, and how to work hard on our own to become better each and every day. And I really fear that we're, here as adults trying to navigate these. Again, they're incredibly tough decisions, right? We're talking life and death, and people feel passionately, as we've heard today, on all sides. And we're trying to keep that platform going. We've been doing that successfully, and doing our best from our end, right? And but just as you're hearing here today, business owners encounter those conversations, and we're trying to navigate those waters too, right? So how do you handle somebody's passion, feelings that we've heard today in your business each and every day, and those aren't easy, and we don't like being faced with the fact of, hey, either everybody follows these orders or everybody pays the consequences. That's a tough position to put all of us in, and it's easier, I guess if I were a betting person, right, if we're on Vegas, I would probably err on that side, like, hey, it seems like an obvious choice. Let's just close everything down and the risk goes away. But I don't think that that's proven to be the case. I don't think the risk does go away, unfortunately. I wish it were the case, but I don't think it's a binary choice. And the other part of that is I don't think we yet know what the consequences are of not having people participating in sports, not socializing, not feeding the economy. We don't yet know of that. We've heard personal stories here, but I have a personal friend whose son committed suicide, right? Great kid, played sports, all that good stuff, and got stuck in playing video games. We're encouraging them to be doing the opposite of what we would like them to be doing. So, but I think that goes for adults and youth, and I appreciate the time. I know I'm at the end.
Mr. Armstrong, I agree, and one of the reasons why my second priority to keeping the hospitals open is to keep the businesses open. With regards to sports, youth sports in particular, what I've said is I've got grandchildren who play youth sports. I've gone to some of their games. I've gone to a couple of the tournaments. In some of the tournaments, the officials go around and remind the parents, the people in the bleachers, to be wearing the masks, and they comply. In others, they don't. I understand that the kids, while on the field, don't wear masks. They should when they come into the dugout. I want them to be able to continue to play youth sports. But if the parents or if the people in the bleachers refuse to wear it, that's where the problem is. I had an assistant whose daughter plays in the select softball.
Okay.
The tournament, they went to a big tournament in Frisco last week, or the week before last, because they were in Seguin this weekend. And basically, here's the rules. If they catch you with someone in the bleachers without a mask, they forfeit the team and ask the team to leave. She said she came back in fact, the way she said it was, the coach said, we're going to all have to be like Emily's mom and wear the mask. Some people didn't come to the game, but the ones that were there were wearing the masks, and the tournament continued. And so what I have asked and what I've requested, again, that's an outdoor activity. Mm-hmm. That's really beyond my lane. Mm-hmm. But what I have said is the governor's order would be the one that would go into effect at that point in time. But what we've asked, and I think what Vinny would say, or he'd say he really would prefer you not to have the tournament, but what I would at least say is I would encourage the parents. And a lot of times, if you are the organizer of the event, we'll simply go around and request that people put on the mask. They'll do that because they do want to see their kids play. And that's what I would ask of you and the folks that want the youth sports to continue. When it comes to high school, UIL, TEA. When it comes to sporting events, professional, they've done a pretty good job. But again, all of that is in the governor's stuff and is really, I can state my opinion as far as I would hope that they would wear the masks. But that is where I'm saying, when I go to visit those places, those are where I see the people not complying and not wearing the masks. And when I see them in some of the bars that are quote-unquote restaurants or where they're being abused, and unfortunately, in those situations, I have no authority. So again, thank you. Please hear that, 1, keep the hospitals open, 2, keep the businesses open.
Sure. Could I just add real quick on your
Sure.
on your note? So, folks aren't required to wear a mask if they have a medical exemption, correct?
That is correct.
And as business owners, that's the position that we're in, right? So how do you enforce that? For example, if a kid's game and
businesses have to make that determination themselves.
Correct.
Not by my order. That is correct. What we've said is
that's all I'm asking for. Yeah.
What I've said is they have to have a health policy, and at minimal, except for those with medical conditions, their customers and their employees have to wear a mask indoors.
Yes.
And that's the way my order reads. The governor's is a little bit different. The governors would say that if you can't social distance in the bleachers, then you ought to be wearing masks.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Paul, followed by Shannon Paul, followed by Christine. It looks like Goose.
Judge Whitley and, excuse me, it's my time started.
Go ahead.
Judge Whitley and Commissioners, I want to ask you to not approve the renewal of the declaration of a local disaster. We the people know that this declaration has more to do with you consolidating control over our lives and spending more tax dollars than it does with protecting our health. I'm sure you will not agree with me on this, though. You and your public health director make it seem as though people are dropping like flies across Tarrant County, when in fact this is not the case. Yes, there is a coronavirus and it is contagious, but it is proven that it is not especially deadly. Certainly not like it appeared back in the spring of this year. Your heavy-handed, overreaching mandates are not needed. You need to vote to remove your shackles that you have placed on the citizens of this county. We are not your slaves to be told with whom we can congregate, how close we can be to others, and whether to wear a mask on our face or not. Have you forgotten that this is the United States of America? Here we have the freedom to assemble. Have you forgotten about the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution? Do you really think that it is your duty to tell us what businesses are essential and which businesses are not essential? Basically, you're deciding whose labor is legitimate or not. You are choosing winners and losers. Is that the kind of government you want for this county, for this state, for this nation? Last week, the people of this county made their voices heard in this very courtroom. And what has been done concerning that outcry against this court's tyranny? More restrictive measures have been put in place to silence our voices. I commend you for having the integrity to have all of the approximately 70 write-in comments read in this room. But I must adamantly disagree with the measures that you have since put in place to keep our voices from being heard. Maybe some don't know about these measures, so I'll seek to enlighten them. Formerly, write-in comments were publicly read in this meeting. Now our comments are simply filed, but not read to the court. Formerly, we were allowed 1,000 characters to express our thoughts on the write-in comments. As of yesterday, it had been reduced to just under 900. Formerly, we had until 5 p.m. the day before this meeting to submit our comments, and now we have only until noon. Sirs, ma'am, Need I remind you that this is not Cuba, nor is it Venezuela, nor is it North Korea. This is the United States of America, and this is Texas. Your behavior is tantamount to the dictators that run these third world countries. We, the people of Tarrant County, Texas, do not need a nanny state to care for us. We need you to get out of the way so we can once thrive again. I urge you not to extend the declaration of local disaster and to end the mask mandate. And I urge all true Texans to join the resistance. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comments, sir. Shannon Paul.
To pass those to the
Sure.
report.
Absolutely.
Those are my source documents, and I believe those should be required reading for every public servant. That's the Constitution. Mr. Whitley, I have to say I'm pretty disappointed in you. You've aimed low, and you've completely missed the mark. After months of citizens speaking up in this meeting against your unconstitutional and tyrannical mandates of the mask, you still don't get it. You think this is all about politics. But this has nothing to do with politics and everything to do with our God-given rights. These rights are apolitical. They extend above and beyond politics. No politician can revoke them because they are God-given. So let me instruct you. This is a matter of slavery versus freedom. You've taken the oath of office to uphold the Constitution that protects our God-given rights. The Constitution does not grant us these rights. They are given to us by God and God alone, and you cannot take them away. Benjamin Franklin says, "A nation of well-informed men who have been taught to know and prize the rights which God has given them cannot be enslaved. It is in this region of ignorance that tyranny begins." So, Tarrant County citizens, waken from your slumber. Do not continue to wallow in ignorance or continue to be spoon-fed by the lies of the media and these officials. Educate yourselves. The Declaration of Independence tells us of our God-given rights. It also informs us that to secure these rights, governments are instituted and derived by the consent from the governed. But whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. So I will say it again, dear citizens, like I did last week. Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. There is no retreat but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged, and their clanking may be heard in the streets of Tarrant County. When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty. It is your right, nay, it is your duty to practice civil disobedience against any extension of this mask mandate and any further shutdowns. These masks are a lie.
1 minute.
Anecdotal evidence is not a scientific study. RCT studies are the most accurate, and they prove otherwise, that masks do not work. So if you want to quote science, Mr. Tanasia, then how about we present some? Proof has been laid at your feet week after week after week, yet you continue to ignore the truth. These masks are nothing less than the shackles of tyranny and slavery. The chains were broken long ago, so how dare you try to shackle us again? If you vote for an extension for this mask mandate, you're each voting to enslave every citizen of Tarrant County. Each of you are voting for slavery to reign in our state again. You're voting against every life that was given for our freedoms. You're voting for the enslavement of your posterity. This is not a vote for freedom. A vote for an extension for this mandate is a vote for slavery, and it's a vote for tyranny. And I say shame on every single one of you who votes for it. We do not consent.
Thank you, Ms. Paul. Kristen Guzman.
Good afternoon. Anyway, the great Thomas Sowell has a book called that really sums up what I see in this court here is The Vision of the Anointed, Self-Congratulations as Social Policy. A lot of people came here to talk today, but you did all this picture taking and all this stuff ahead of time, which shows you disregard we the people. And here's the thing is, I don't know if you understand this or if everybody here understands this. You work for us. We don't work for you. And I'll tell you what happened. I was in Massachusetts a couple weeks ago, And I'd like to brag to the people of Massachusetts how the Republic of Texas is different than Massachusetts. And I was knocked flat on my back when someone shows me an article about a Tarrant County judge who said he wants to walk around fining people. So what I see is an aspiring tin-horn dictator in yourself. That's what I see. And then you also have the nerve to go on KLRD and say, masks are the best policy, that they're the things that work on the virus. Where did you get your study on that? Where's your information? I got a study from Denmark that I can read to you that says that wearing masks and not wearing masks does not make a difference. But you know what? I've already been seeing how you interact in this court today. You're already going to vote for the mask. I know what you're going to do. And because you're the normal politician who's afraid of the media. I will tell you something about the media, too. And the great Ann Coulter said, the stupidest people at any university are journalism majors. And so if you're trying to suck up to the journalists and the media and stuff like that, well, you can laugh. But, I mean, it is true, and you know it's true. And the kabuki theater that goes on in here, you don't really believe masks work. You don't. These people aren't sitting 6 feet apart. Well, he might be from them. I saw the people going around handing out signs, signing with pens and stuff like that. They did the elbow thing. But you guys don't actually believe it. It's all a shibboleth. You know what a shibboleth is? A shibboleth is you're showing what side you're on. It was a Jewish password to get past the soldiers and stuff like that. By wearing this, you're telling the media that, hey, I'm with you guys. You're telling the leftists, hey, I'm with you. Don't come after me. So anyway, so just show some courage. Don't try to suck up to the media. Do what's right. We the people have our rights, and you're violating them with these masks. And we all know they don't. Every person in here knows they don't work. Every one of us do. It's all kabuki theater. Thank you.
I enjoy our conversations this morning. Thank you. Erwin Morgan, followed by Sherrod Perry, followed by Elaine Miller.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Healthline.com defines helicopter parenting as a hyper involvement in a child's life. Although with pure intentions to protect, this ends up being a disparaging event by impairing a child's mental capacity, emotional development, and sense of entitlement. It's essential for a parent to instill confidence in children by providing them with sound knowledge and a safe learning environment, and then allowing the child to make decisions while accepting the consequences, whether positive or negative. An overbearing parent only breeds rebellion. The same is true with the situation we find ourselves in. The government has attempted to helicopter over its citizens, albeit with good intentions of safety and health. But in the recent weeks, we've heard the court's disdain for apparent non-compliance of the rules by county residents. The statement has been repeated in countless interviews that if residents simply would comply, things would be better. Unfortunately, this is not true. There is currently only one location on Earth that has handled the medical crisis and reaped the benefits. Worldwide, we've learned that virtual school, lockdowns, and mask mandates don't stop this virus. They don't slow the spread or flatten the curve. We simply cannot control a virus any more than we can control a natural disaster. We have learned that this virus is deadly for some, but not deadly for all. May I suggest the court and the residents of our county need the same advice a good parent-child relationship needs. Our residents need to be given sound medical advice from doctors, not advisors. They need to be educated about the available treatments and to be given an opportunity to conduct business the way that they choose. Allowing residents to choose in scenarios is a freedom that comes with a risk. I risk many things on a daily basis, some more dangerous to me than coronavirus, and yet this court allows me to take those risks and not to intervene. I take risks and I accept the consequences for my actions. In conclusion, a parent cannot teach independence by overstepping its bounds. A child would never learn to make wise decisions. Likewise, the government should not be overstepping its bounds, telling us how to conduct business, how to spend our free time, and how to cover our faces. In order to empower citizens to make the right choice, we have to give them the opportunity to do so. In its essence, freedom is just that, the ability to make a decision, even if it's the wrong one. I agree with Governor Abbott when he says the government should not be micromanaging everyone's lives. Therefore, I ask the court to not accept the Fifth Amendment of the emergency order and to cancel mask mandates and business restrictions in Tarrant County.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Mr. Perry, followed by Ms. Miller, followed by Don Martin, followed by Jody.
All right. Good afternoon. All right. Insanity. It's been defined as doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So here we are. Cases are spiking, so I understand the fear. But we've been doing 8 months of this, shutdowns and masks and distancing. And what's interesting also to me is that the thing that's playing out here is essentially playing out worldwide. In Europe, in many other countries, the same spiking cases and the same government response. Let's shut down again. Let's put on the mask some more. Let's just go through this whole routine again. So it really does seem like there's some worldwide coordination going on. And that's the big picture that I keep talking about lately. Okay, when I talk about New World Order and Great Reset, people are like, whoa, it's real. In fact, the Great Reset is being promoted in mass media. And, there's a lot of elites behind this, which I won't name right now. But if you want to look into the Bilderberg meetings and things like the Council on Foreign Relations and the World Economic Forum and the Trilateral Commission, on and on, if you want to look into that, you will see that this is a real thing. Okay, there is a globalist elite that is manipulating and pulling the puppet strings on all the events, really everywhere, and they want to control the people. They want to depopulate the people. This is a thing, and that's why we're being asked to do such ridiculous measures that are counterproductive, because it's achieving their aim. All right, so. And the vaccine, which isn't too far down the road here, is another step in this population coal. Okay, and I've read and I've looked at a lot of doctors talking about these vaccines, and I've heard about the trials. And I am pretty certain that a lot of people are going to get sick. It's going to be sterilization. It's going to even kill a significant number of people who take that vaccine. And it may kill them slowly or quickly. I don't know. And then even after that happens, once you start seeing that devastation, they won't blame the vaccine. They're going to blame it on, they're going to say, oh, it's another strain of corona. So I'm just putting that warning out there. Don't fall for that. If they say, oh, corona has mutated and now we have COVID-21, okay, and now we need, more vaccines. And the media will totally lie to the people continuously, because the media is also being pulled and controlled by the same elites that I mentioned earlier. It is a coordination happening. Okay, people need to wake up to this fact, because that's the only way we get out of this. We can debate about masks all day long. I'm tired of debating about masks. It's not even about the mask. It's about what the masks are being used to do. It's about what these shutdowns are being used to do. There is an intent. There's an evil intention behind all of this. We see it. We know it. We're telling you about it. And I don't understand what more evidence you need at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Perry.
Okay.
Elaine Miller. Good morning or afternoon.
My name's Elaine Miller.
Elaine.
I'm a Tarrant County resident, small business owner. We've been complying with the mask mandate since it began. And I'm a real estate broker, been in property management for over 36 years. This is a danger to our industry and to real estate agents and people that meet with clients in vacant properties. I frequently have to show vacant properties to total strangers. They call, they email, they schedule. This is a normal routine business. But with the mask mandate, people show up with masks, and I can't recognize them. Someone could attack me, and I would not be able to describe that person to the police adequately. They could go on to commit other crimes. They could also strangle me with my mask. They could suffocate me with it. This is ridiculous, and it needs to stop. We can easily social distance in our business, and most businesses. Tarrant County residents are very responsible people, and masks should be totally voluntary. I cannot hear well, and with masks, I have to get within 6 feet of distance sometimes to understand what that person is saying, and so do the people that are talking to me. They may not be able to hear me through my mask. It's time to vote no on this mask extension, and let us get back to business and life as normal. Please vote no to extend this.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Don Martin, followed by Jody.
Good morning. So in February, I was sick for 2 weeks. I had just a virus and was told to rest, drink fluids, and stay home from work until the fever was gone. I did exactly that, and about 7 days later, I was able to get back to my life. Now, it was a crappy 2 weeks. Don't get me wrong there. I'll give you that. But it was just simply a bad cold or flu. Well, 2 weeks later, the world was shutting down for this killer virus, and after a few days of the reports, I realized what I had 2 weeks prior was probably exactly what was going around. Great, I thought. No need to panic. It'll pass through our community quickly, and we'll flatten the curve, as they say, and get back to life. I guess that joke was on me. So this weekend, as I thought about what to say to you today, I thought about quoting some studies and maybe presenting some graphs and data. I even found some pictures on the internet that I thought would be interesting to share. I decided to forgo all that because y'all only listen to the people and data that supports your narrow beliefs and fears anyway. But as a wise man recently said, only a fool would claim the omniscience to make an informed judgment for every person in every circumstance in every community. Sadly, this crisis has revealed that fools abound in public office and that a fool with power can quickly become a petty tyrant. We've been under a mask mandate since July, and I'd estimate 99% or more are wearing them because anytime I'm allowed in a store without one and without being harassed, I'm literally the only one in there. So if the masks really do work, then why are we seeing another spike? I doubt the very few of us not wearing them are causing that spike. With virtually no evidence of reinfection, why do people who have had the virus need to keep wearing a mask? Aren't they no longer contagious? Or is this just about compliance for you? The virus has shown virtually no impact on children. So why do you want to shut down their sports, which keep them healthy, energetic, and disciplined? The virus has also shown not to spread outside. So why are you encouraging everyone to stay home and quit the outdoor sports or even wear masks outside? And help me understand, surgeons train for years to wear a mask in a sterile environment, to never touch it. Yet John Doe or Jane Smith are wearing their soggy face diapers, yanking it up and down, pulling it on and off between stores, and even between food bites, cross-contaminating their masks and everything they touch. How is that helping anything? If anything, that is where you're causing the spikes. And then finally, why is it okay for Mayor Price, Sheriff Wayborn, the commissioners, the Whitley family, or even Governor Abbott to continue their lives all summer long, many indoors mask-free time, and now we all have to pay for their indiscretions? Or maybe, just maybe, they realize the masks don't work and the joke really is on us.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Or, excuse me, Ms. Martin. Jody.
My November 3rd speech, I hope some people here, especially the business owners, go back and look at the archives here. So I'm glad that's still on there. But my November 3rd speech has now been read in Zurich, Switzerland, and they're watching you as well. It was read in front of the central banking facility by another mother like me that lost her children to an abuser for funding. It's also being read now in Germany, so it's going all over globally. For the business people that are in here, I want them to go to www.constitutionallawgroup.us, or you call Rick Martin himself at 361-342-7760, and he will help you with these tyrants, these court enforcement, and the EOC. There is probably over 90% compliance now with these unlawful masks. So why is it mandatory? Like Sherrod said, it's just compliance. That's all. It's just compliance. It's the agenda, all that. People are voluntarily succumbing to nonsense now and will continue to heed the fear-mongering agenda, as it can be proven by simply being out in public for a short period of time. This masking order has created an environment where singling out and discriminating against disabled people is now considered normal. This has set back all the work that has been done in the previous century towards creating equal acceptance and equal opportunity for disabled people. This law has encouraged business management to enforce an unlawful order and police their customers, even though they do not have to. A friend of mine that has 2 children, ages 3 and 8 months old, was just told at Graceful Buys and Grapevine she had to mask up these children, an 8-month-old and a 3-year-old. Are you hearing me? We were outside. I am her ride, I am her mentor, and it was my money that was going to be spent. I was outside, never intended on going inside. And they kicked me off the premises because I would not mask up an 8-month-old. Also, I heard you have stated 211. We can call 211. Oh, can we? Sure, let's call 211. Let's call and see how much food we can get for those of us that can't work anymore because of these orders. You go up to North Fort Worth Baptist Church and call them yourself and ask them how much food they're giving out. I went myself to do my own investigating because I needed the food, because I haven't been able to work because of this order. 1 bag every 6 months. That's what I get. 1 bag. And half of it is stuff I probably wouldn't eat. I will if I'm starving, but that's it. Vinny tells us now to have virtual Thanksgivings. Many of us have already lost our children because of the Title IV funding that funds the CARES Act and this fraud virus. We also lost our income and our will to even live now. So not to worry, Vinny or Whitley, there's nothing left to be thankful for. What I would say is there's a wish for all of us that what we want on this agenda is actually a motion for assisted suicide, so we can end this now rather than later.
Thank you, Jody. That concludes our in-person comments. Now we will go to our call comments. First is Ann Kaiser.
Hi, you've reached 469-263-6.
Next is Kathleen Pullman.
Hello?
Kathleen, this is Judge Whitley, and we're at that point in our agenda for audience participation.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Hi, yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, I'm sorry. We're at that point in our meeting for audience participation. You had indicated that you wish to speak and address the court. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Hello, I am calling because I'm concerned about Tarrant County's handling of COVID. I am an RN BSN. I am against further mask mandates or lockdowns. If you haven't already read the Great Barrington Declaration, written by professors at Harvard, Oxford, and Stanford, you should. This declaration has been signed by thousands of doctors worldwide. It's time to start listening to them. In their highly qualified professional opinions, lockdowns are not the answer. Masks are not the answer. Please do not continue to take away our rights and freedoms. These measures are extreme for a virus that has a 99.6% survival rate. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kathleen. Next is Janet Jackson.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Janet. This is Judge Whitley. We're at that time in the agenda for public comments. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Janet Jackson. I would like to remind this court, what does the Constitution of the U.S. say? The Constitution is the law of the land. At this point, the general misconception is that any statute passed by legislators bearing the appearance of law constitutes law. That also means any mandate by any governor or any judge that violates the Constitution is not valid. I would remind the court that all laws which are repugnant to the Constitution are null and void, and a lot of people in this courtroom need to be aware. They may not and do not need to follow for orders to shut down. You do not have that authority. None. Zilch. Nada. Zero. Prende. Furthermore, neither does Governor Abbott. His executive order, GA32, GA31, or any other executive order under this National Declaration or Texas Declaration of Emergency is null and void. It goes against the supreme law of the land. The only reason for these executive orders is to destroy the economy of Texas, to further use Title IV D and E funding to perpetuate the fraud of the Corona. We need to stop. Every business needs to quit complying with your mask mandate, which is illegal. We have a right to breathe oxygen. The first part of the Declaration of Independence says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are the right to life. Without oxygen, we cannot live. It is impossible. Rebreathing carbon dioxide causes hypercapnia. If Vinny Tanasia was such an intelligent person with an MBBA, which is not equivalent to an MD, a doctor, and it is not even equivalent to a doctor in India. An MBBA, or an MBBS, sorry for my misspoken initials on that, an MBBS does not even equal an MD in India. MBBS is a prerequisite to get to become an MD. To become an MD in the United States, he would need to complete a residency of 3 years and take the United States medical licensing exam. He is not a doctor. He should not be presented as a doctor. And everyone needs to know he is not a doctor in any form, sense, or even imagination whatsoever. You need to quit presenting him as such, and the Fox 4 News and any other news station needs to also presenting him as a doctor.
Thank you. Next will be Karen Starnes.
Hello.
Karen, this is Judge Whitley. It is that time on the agenda for audience participation. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think there must be a time delay. I've been watching it. Thank you. Let me start. Mandatory masks are tyranny and un-American. I want to go over a few of our Texas laws real quick. It is unlawful for anyone to recommend that someone else wear a mask. It's designated by the FDA as a medical device, and it is unlicensed practice of medicine when someone is told to wear a mask. It's a violation of the Texas Penal Code 165.159, subject to fine of $1,000 and possible jail time. It's also unlawful to take someone's temperature. Gathering vital statistics is a violation of the Fourth Amendment, which protects a person's right to privacy. Violation of this protection will result in a report to the U.S. Department of Justice, which is required by law to investigate civil rights violations. Also, it's unlawful to prohibit someone from entering a public facility or a private business which is open to the public. This violates the Civil Rights Act and the law. Title II, it requires free and equal access to all services and facilities without discrimination. It's unconstitutional to mandate anything that can cause harm to citizens. This is a human rights issue and a violation of the First Amendment. Stop this tyrannical behavior now, sir. Masks do not stop viruses. I know so many people who have obediently worn the mask and have gotten COVID anyway. My family, including myself, have medical reasons why wearing a mask affects our health negatively. We also have deeply held religious objections to masks. And our lives matter. There's so many in our community that feel the way we do, that believe the way we do. Heard so many people testifying today, and I just stand with them. Okay? All of our lives matter. If this is about keeping citizens safe and healthy, then you must care about every individual citizen and not penalize those with medical conditions or disabilities. Every citizen should have the freedom to assess the risks for themselves and make health decisions for themselves and their children based on their specific health history, religious beliefs, and the scientific data available. You are elected to be servant leaders by the consent of the governed. This is America, and we do not consent. And I just want to add a little bit more to my prepared statement. I came this morning. I got there about 9:30, between 9:30 and 9:45, and I tried to enter the building without a mask on. I was barred from entering this public building. I was treated harshly and inhumanely. I was demeaned, yelled at for simply wanting to redress my grievances with the local government. I was physically threatened with forceful removal if I didn't comply or get out immediately. My voice was silenced. My right to free speech was hindered. These mandates are illegal. We ask the court to move forward with respect and concern for the safety, health, and religious liberty of all citizens.
Thank you, Ms.
Once
Barnes.
again, you do not have the consent of the governed, and you are in violation of the Texas Constitution and the U.S. Constitution.
Thank you, Ms. Starnes. Next will be Alice Klein.
You have reached the voicemail box of...
Next is Stacy Jennings. Stacy, this is Judge Whitley. We're at that point in the agenda for audience participation, and you had asked to address the court, so you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Hello and good afternoon. My name is Stacy Jennings and I'm an 11-year-old softball player. I'd like to say that I am extremely disappointed that Judge Whitley continues to call for youth sports to be canceled. I've been playing softball every week and I can tell you that COVID-19 is not as much of an issue in our outside sport because we stay in our own softball families. I know that there are a lot of girls in our area that would absolutely love to continue playing just as much as I do. And in my opinion, outdoor youth sports are very important and they need to continue to play ball. Finally, I would just like to thank you for your time and hope that you keep youth sports up and running.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Next is Corinne Treese. I'll probably mispronounce that. Okay, that didn't...
You have reached the voicemail box of...
Next is RR. I got an idea who that is, but I'm not.
Hello.
Is this Rebecca?
Yep.
You have 3 minutes. You know the drill.
Thank you. In my research this week, I came across a fascinating article that I would like to share. False positive COVID tests will extend unjustifiable lockdowns. Fauci admits minuscule accuracy. Whether you live in the USA or most of Europe, one thing remains true. COVID-19 testing regimes are being aggressively pushed onto the population. In February, according to NPR, an internal review of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention confirmed COVID tests could be wrong 33% of the time, but CDC sent them out across the country anyway. But that's not the whole story of the CDC's issues with quality control. Timothy Stizo, director of FDA, visited the CDC's respiratory disease lab and found sloppy lab protocols. Months later, his own agency was disgraced as they approved tests for emergency use authorization without even the most basic vetting. That's bad, but here's the real story. The mainstream narrative was allowed to change on August 29th with the New York Times published, "Your coronavirus test is positive. Maybe it shouldn't be." The polymerase chain reaction, or PCR test, amplifies viral RNA using multiple cycles to produce a detectable amount. The cycles threshold CT values is the number of cycles necessary to spot the virus. The false positives come down to a question of testing cycles. Most tests set the limit at 40, a few at 37. The CDC's own calculations suggest it is extremely difficult to detect any live virus in a sample above a threshold of 33 cycles. Dr. Anthony Fauci recently echoed the previous findings, long reported by the independent media and other lone voices. He stated, if you get a cycle threshold of 35 or more, that the chances of it being replicated competent are minuscule. Got that? Minuscule. Fauci didn't stop there. You almost never can culture virus from a 37 threshold cycle. So I think if someone does come in with a 37, 38, even 36, you gotta say, yeah, no. It's just dead nucleotides, period. The New York Times investigation confirmed that officials at the Wadesworth Center New York State lab identified positive tests based on a threshold of 40 cycles. Likewise, in Massachusetts, 85 to 90% of people who tested positive in July with a cycle threshold of 40 would have been deemed negative if the threshold were 30 cycles. This is not just an American phenomenon. Similar practices and protocols were being used in the UK. With mortality rates well below anything seen at the height of the first wave, mass testing programs are sure to artificially inflate false cases. This will give the government its much-needed excuse to continue the unscientific, harmful, and inhumane lockdown treatment of their population. The citizens of Tarrant County have provided evidence week after week regarding the inflating numbers. They have driven your policy making. It is now time to stop extending your mandates and the executive order and let businesses and residents decide how to care for themselves.
Thank you, Rebecca. Next is Micah Taylor.
Hello?
Micah Taylor?
Yes.
This is Judge Whitley. We're at that point on the agenda for audience participation. You have 3 minutes to make your comments.
Okay. Just wanted to, advise that I really feel strongly that the mask mandate should not be extended to February. I know that was on the discussion for today, and I find it to be unconstitutional, and I don't believe that it's helping. I mean, the science doesn't really prove that it's helping, so just wanted to voice my opinion.
Thank you, Micah. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Next is Alyssa Snyder.
Hello, this is Alyssa Schneider.
Hi, Alyssa. This is Judge Whitley. We're at the time for you to make your comments. You have 3 minutes.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Commissioners, first of all, thank you for your service to Tarrant County. I am here to share comments regarding the forced wearing of masks. My name is Alyssa Schneider. I'm a full-time employee for a data and technology consulting firm. I'm also a small business owner, and I'm a mom to 3 children ages 1 to 10 years old. So I have a lot of irons in this fire, so to speak. I've spent the past decade paying attention on how to live healthy and how to raise healthy children in spite of our current world that is full of no shortage of antibiotics, vaccines, and other toxins that do us all damage every day. So in short, you can call me Supermom. With this designation, I want you to know that I take full responsibility for my family's health. I do not blindly accept advice from the CDC and the AAP because I am intelligent enough to, 1, read the actual studies that are done and understand the fallacies in them, and 2, to also look at how the country I love, the United States of America, fares when we compare health outcomes to other parts of the world. I am saddened by the terrible infant mortality rate in this country, the high rates of ADHD and autism, the rise of chronic conditions such as food allergies and asthma, and the staggering percentage of childhood and adult obesity. It was back in 1860 when Louis Pasteur introduced the germ theory of disease. It was theorized that germs were the cause of disease and that we needed to destroy the germs to survive. But his contemporary, Antoine Béchamp, argued that the underlying condition of our body, that determines the risk of disease, not just the germs itself. In his terrain theory, he postulated that a weak body attracted disease while a healthy body resisted it. And rumor has it that Louis Pasteur himself admitted on his deathbed there was more merit to that terrain theory. But at that point, modern medicine had already set out on a new course by then. Today, we are myopically focused on COVID-19 germs. Our government has created create a culture of fear and anxiety around possible exposure to germs, and that is hurting us. Germs are not the problem. The problem is our terrain, our bodies. If our bodies are weak, then any germ has the potential to harm us. I do everything in my power to create a sense of normalcy for my family. I pulled my kids out of public school because of forced masking this year. My 8-year-old almost hyperventilated the first time we asked her to wear a mask. You may have seen a news story come out of St. Louis this past weekend about a 4-year-old that has a bacterial lung infection because of prolonged exposure to a mask. Any rational person knows that you mask the sick and the contagious, not the healthy, unless your goal is to make the healthy sick. Breath is life. When we exhale, that is a natural form of detoxification. You wouldn't eat or drink your own urine and waste. Why would you rebreathe your own exhaled air? Our local government, with you all in charge, needs to be mounting campaigns to combat obesity, help restore proper levels of vitamin D3 and C, and helping people understand food sensitivities or allergies that are causing their immune systems to be compromised. Otherwise, you are literally responsible for turning our society into what we see on movies like The Matrix or WALL-E, people that are so scared to actually be human that they would rather live life in a pod or a shell, and this is not living. This is a dangerous path toward fascism, and I implore you to do the opposite of what everyone else is doing, to stand up and be brave and say that here in Tarrant County, where the West begins, we don't just say we love freedom, we act like it too. We give our people the freedom to make their own choices, and I don't want the government to be my babysitter, and I surely won't allow them to take the place of my God and the inalienable rights that he bestowed on us, including the right to breath. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is Sarah Gary.
Hello?
Sarah, this is Judge Whitley. We're at that point on the agenda for you to make your comments. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, I don't have any comments. I just oppose having a mask mandated or being fined for it.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Next is Rachel Burton.
Hello?
Rachel, this is Judge Whitley. We're at that point in time for your comments. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Judge Whitley. You had said you wanted masks in order to keep businesses open. Sir, I allege that masks being mandatory is actually killing businesses. People are on one end of the spectrum or the other in regards to this issue. There are people who believe the masks work and wear them because they're afraid of this virus. And most of those people are still only going out for necessary errands. Then there are those of us who are not afraid. We've decided we'd rather take the fraction of a chance of dying and see our friends and family. And we'd love to go places, but we don't want to go sit somewhere and have to wear a mask. So we haven't been to the skating rink, the trampoline park, Six Flags, any of it. Masks are preventing businesses from fully recovering, and I'm afraid more will remain closed and closed down if you don't end this mandate. Your other reason for extending the mandate to keep the hospitals from overflowing, this ended up being a farce months ago when it was used as stay-at-home orders, and I'm not sure that it's not a farce now. We were just as close capacity at this time last year when flu season started. I've also heard we're getting patients from other counties. Not sure if that's true, but maybe that can be addressed after. 4 months into wearing masks, COVID-19 should have been eradicated by now if the mask worked. I calculated the percentage of population who have tested positive in each city in this county. Where I live, compliance is over 99% with the mask, and we have the same percentage of positive cases per population as every other city. In fact, they're all extremely similar. And you know mask compliance is not 99% in every city. This tells you right there they're 100% ineffective without looking at a single scientific study. Because honestly, it doesn't matter if they work or not. At this point, it's completely irrelevant. because you only have a fraction of a chance of dying from this virus, if at all, at certain ages. It's absolutely absurd to make healthy people expect to wear them or get fined. Someone along the way decided that a fraction of a chance is generally worth a risk taking because they called it rare. All of your prescription medications come with a rare but serious side effect. And it's actually the same chance as this. I'm asking you to let me make that risk assessment for myself and my family. You said we all need to come together to wear a mask, but coming together was never having everyone believe and do the same thing. If that were applied to something like sexuality, you would be called homophobic. If you feel in any way responsible for the deaths in this county due to COVID-19, don't. If you feel like it's your job to protect the health of the citizens of this county, don't. We don't expect you to. It's not your job, and we don't want any of you to. Please do not extend this mandate. I agree with what every single caller against this mandate and speaker said before me. And just please end this now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Next is Elaine Parsley. Elaine, this is Judge Whitley. We're at the point on the agenda for your comments. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Judge Whitley. Thank you, Commissioners. I am sure you are tired of hearing all these comments, just as we are tired of dealing with the mask mandate. I have watched you all flipping through papers and reading things and looking at your phones. So I hope you are hearing what my brave fellow citizens are sharing, because to them, it means the world. As a part of the people that actually elected you to office, I want to remind you that we elected a Republican judge. We, the people, did not elect a Democrat judge like our neighbors in Dallas County. So I request that you stop the threats of closures and fines and remove the mask mandate. Hospitals are not overwhelmed. Doctors know how to treat deathly symptoms of COVID-19. This is on you, Judge and Commissioners. If you need a reminder of what it means to be a Republican in the state of Texas, Judge, then please have a visit with our party state chairman, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. Free your people in Texas. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Next is Caitlin, I think it's Neighbor.
I'm sorry, the person you were trying to...
We're going to go through this one more time. We're now going to try to call Ann Kaiser. And this is Judge Whitley. We're at the point in time for your comments. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. As the Commissioners Court is the governing body for Tarrant County government, I would like to remind the Court of 2 of the 7 principles of the Constitution: popular sovereignty and limited government. The principle of popular sovereignty is that the people establish governments and are the source of all governmental powers. People tell the government what to do instead of governments controlling the lives of the people. The government derives its power from the consent of the governed. It is not the place of government officials to rule and make decisions as they themselves see fit, but to follow the lead of the people they serve. Therefore, when 1 or 8 or 70 or more people within your jurisdiction repeatedly tell you that you do not have their consent to proceed with a ruling, their voices should be listened to and not dismissed or silenced. The second principle of limited government is that governments must have restricted and highly controlled power so that they do not exercise tyranny or unrestrained power over the people. Individual rights must be firewalled and protected from government abuse. Our founders were keenly aware of how easy it would be for those in government to exceed their authority and usurp the will of the people. Thus, even the smallest encroachment, though it may be done under the guise of good intentions and what is best for everyone, must be stopped and pushed back on. As previously stated, it is not the government's place to tell people how to manage their health. Regardless of what the science does or does not say regarding masks, the government does not constitutionally have the authority to tell people to wear a mask in public or anywhere else. To claim otherwise is an admission of tyranny. Again, while it may seem that wearing a mask is a minor inconvenience for the good of the many, that line of reasoning is not only immaterial, but also sets the precedent for further government encroachment upon individual liberties, as we are seeing in states such as Oregon, where citizens are being told how many people they can invite to private gatherings in their homes, and the governor is encouraging people to report their neighbors if they suspect them of defying this order. Therefore, to Judge Whitley and the other members of the court, I say, you do not have my consent to extend the mask mandate. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. Next is Alice Klein.
You have reached the voicemail box.
Next is Karina Treese.
You told it your fees.
This was the one I think that took.
You have reached the voicemail box.
And last is Caitlin Neighbor.
I'm sorry, the person you are trying to reach.
Okay, that concludes our audience participations regarding the mask policy, restaurants and bars. And so with that, Mr. Manius, take it over.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, if we could go to the county administrator section, we're going to start with item number 1. We have several actions that we're going to be asking you to do on this. First of all, I'll ask Guidehouse if you're on the line, if we can begin with your presentation.
Hi, DK. Yes, we're here. Good afternoon, Judge and Commissioners. If we can advance to the project status slide, we'll get started. Okay, Okay, so we'll begin with recent activities. Last week, we supported the county in structuring partnerships with retailers to provide free flu vaccines to uninsured residents. We developed self-attestation forms to be used by uninsured residents who receive these vaccines through the county. We provided feedback on the CRF eligibility of various expenses, including those for NGO and some rental assistance potential programs there as well. We updated the county on our FEMA PA progress, provided feedback on some additional NGO expenses, and in collaboration with the county, we presented information on required reporting and expenditure timing during the weekly office hours for municipalities that are receiving CRF funds from the county. We also provided some additional feedback on CRF eligibility for NGO construction expenses, documentation, as well as some COVID-19 vaccine-related expenses by the county. Our areas for discussion today will be FEMA, pillars of focus, county grants update, and the county spend update. Any questions on this slide before we move on?
No.
Okay, so moving on to slide 2, this is a FEMA PA update. Unfortunately, Sean couldn't be here, so I'll do this one this week. So since last week, the FEMA PW amount has been adjusted down a bit to exclude certain costs that ended up being eligible. The total is now about $2.4 million, and this is the total amount of which FEMA will pay 75%. We are in the final stages of this PW. We don't anticipate any additional requests from FEMA, but of course we can't be sure. But there's next steps would be their review, and then there's a few different layers of review for FEMA, and then it would come back to the county for approval. For PW2, we have identified all the eligible costs, so we're in the process of gathering all the necessary documentation at the county to make sure that we can put together something that will receive as few questions and response from FEMA as possible. Any questions on this slide? Move on.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we can move on to the pillars of focus. Here we've got the high-level updates from the county CRF programming. Since last week, we've just adjusted the testing pillar and the information there. The county provided some great updates on the overall testing effort just to make sure that you all have all this information in one place. So we know that there are about 18 testing sites in the county. The county continues to support these sites, and they will continue to do so and to expand testing as well across the county. And any questions on the slide before we move on?
Go ahead.
Moving on to the grants up. Oh, was that something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So on slide 4, we've got the grants update. We've got an overview of the county's grants here. Since last week, the county has added a CARES grant from HUD for Section 8 housing in the amount of $948,000, or approximately, and you can see that highlighted in yellow on the third line down there. And that brings the total to $235 million, with about $1 million more than for the previous week. So expenditures related to these grants, including CRF, are captured on the next slide. And if there's no questions on this one, we can move on to the expenses.
So let's move forward.
Okay, moving on to the county spend update. We're continuing with our new expense slide. On the top table here, we've broken out spending by CRF pillar. Obligated here refers to both invoices and encumbered expenditures, and social services includes both rental and NGO assistance. So as you can see from the obligated subtotal for CRF, the county has invoiced and encumbered about $123 million in eligible expenses. This includes expenses the county is seeking reimbursement for from FEMA, and once that first PW is finalized, we'll break that out as an additional revenue source here, and then break out those expense analysis of that. In the planned column, we note that the county is on track to spend all of their remaining $86.8 million in CRF funds by December 30th, and that will be achieved through the activities listed on the right that we mentioned last week. Moving down to the multiple grants, this includes all of the grants listed on the previous slide except for CRF. The county has spent about $5.5 million so far and is on track to spend the remainder by those required deadlines. And of course, those differ a bit from CRF, where CRF is required to be December 30th. The multiple grants in here could be as late as 2021 or 2022. And finally, on the total line, you'll see the $235 million corresponding to the previous slide, with a total obligated amount of $128.5 million and amount to be spent of $106.7. Any questions here before we move to a final?
I have.
There's one question.
It may not be on what she's shown because I haven't seen it, but it concerns the chamber submittals for funding?
Yes, we'll have that report.
Okay, okay, thanks.
Anything else on slide 5, the expenditures? Okay, so moving on to our final slide. This slide repeats much of the information from the previous slide, so I won't go through the details. The main difference here is that this includes FEMA PA as anticipated revenue, and so that alters a little bit the totals between FEMA and then the relief funds. And then the total amount is also a little bit different because it's including that extra 75% of the $2.4 million from FEMA as well. Any questions on this slide? If not, that concludes our presentation, and we'll pass it back to GK.
Thank you. We're going to go over the update on the 4 pillars very quickly, and Commissioner Frickus will have a report for you on the chamber issue also. Some very good news on the Small Business Assistance Program. We're approving 157 additional grants today. That makes a cumulative total of 2,524 awards that equal $20.2 million that we have sent to the private sector. As it relates to the testing, Judge Whitley, you had asked about some numbers last week. As of last week, we on our sites that the county's been involved in, we have tested 26,381 last week. As it relates to the rental assistance, as you can tell, our numbers have gone up steadily. We've approved 1,972. We're still working on about 776 of those. We've allocated $5.9 million for 3 months and a total of $11.8 million as it relates for 6 months of assistance. On the non-governmental, we really have 3 reports. First of all, we continue to have a substantial interest on the non-governmental. You've seen that right now we have a total of 81 grants awarded, and that results in $8.2 million. And we are still looking at other NGOs that may want to apply. However, our platform on the internet is closed at this time. As it relates to municipal distributions and chamber partnerships, you might recall that we had approximately $62 million that went to the cities. We also approved an additional $9 million that were going to go to partners being MHMR, 911 district, which you all have approved, and also chambers. We really had 2 items on the chambers. One was the initial chamber partnership, and we had entered into agreements with 10 chambers and have paid out $43,650. Our new chamber assistance program was something that the portal closed last night, and Ms. McMillan, you want to tell the court exactly what we've done on that?
So as of this morning, we had 17 chambers that had submitted applications, 7 that had not. One of those 7 I had spoken with, and they were inactive. The Forest Hill Chamber was inactive. So we had reached out. I called those ones that had not submitted on Friday and direct email. So I've been working with those, and I just not got response from.
Can you tell us who didn't?
I'm sorry?
The 7? Who was the 7?
It's Azel, Burleson, which I spoke with Burleson, so I thought they were going to be submitting Kennedale, Forest Hill, Northwest Tarrant, Tarrant Asian, and the Fort Worth Black Chamber. Those are the 7 that didn't submit. But Forest Hill is the one that's not active anymore.
Thank you, Lucy. So, members of the court, that's the end of the report as it relates to our 4 pillars. I do have one action item that falls under this particular agenda item, if we're ready to hear that action item. Okay. As we reported earlier, and as Guidehouse has reported, and as we reported in past weeks, the county has incurred expenses that are directly payable and reimbursable by the CARES Relief Act. What we're going to ask you to do today is we're requesting that the court authorize staff to begin to allocate county corona relief funds to eligible presumed payroll costs incurred by the county. We have expended, and these are approximates, but we received almost $210 million from the federal government. We have expended approximately $136 million. The projected savings or remainder of the CRF funds, and this is an approximate, is about $74 million. So you can tell that we have expenditures exceeding revenues, and we're asking you now to allow us to allocate these funds to eligible presumed payroll costs within the county.
Now, I would like, I'm going to make a motion that we authorize the auditor and the administrator and budget to go back and to look at the eligible expenditures from March through the end of first off fiscal year 2020, and then that would be the top priority, and then the second priority would be for expenditures subsequent to the end of fiscal year 2020, which would have been September 30th. Part of the reason we need to do this now is because that will allow the auditor's office to go back and to shut down, to evaluate, and then ultimately to close the fiscal year 2020, so we can then turn it over to our outside auditors to complete the audit on this. So I will make that in the form of a motion.
I'll second.
I still second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Any questions or? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, if we can go to
though, I do have a question about the small business assistance grant. Do we have the number yet of applicants that applied the first round and for whatever reason were denied, and then apply the second round and were awarded? I'd be curious to see what that difference is.
Commissioner, we do not have that number now, but let us see if we can get that for you.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
If we're ready to move on, we're going to move to item number 2. We're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve the continuation of the amended declaration of local disaster issued by Judge Whitley on March 18th in its entirety until and through February 28th, 2021.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I do. If you'll give me a moment. I could probably think of numerous reasons after listening to some of our people today, and numerous reasons to not support this. I too question how much good a mask does. I question when the vast majority of the people wear a mask and our numbers are still climbing. And on the other side, I look at where we were in September and running 200 to 300 cases a day, and where we were last week running 2,200 cases, 1,700, 1,800 today. Just these phenomenal numbers that are 8 to 10 times higher. I made a comment to many people that I would, if the numbers could stay low, I would work to try to convince the judge to change his thought on the mask. And when October hit and the numbers started climbing, it just wasn't going to happen. and I understood why. I don't know that we're doing everything we should be doing. I was talking to Vinny last week, and it's on a personal note. I took a 3-day trip out of the country to Mexico, to a seaside area of the Baja Peninsula. I've never seen people work so hard to try to keep people safe as they did in Cabo San Lucas. You got off the plane, you had to step in an antiseptic type solution to clean your feet, your shoes. When we got to the hotel, we found the same procedure, except every place we went and walked into a business, we had our temperature taken. Every place we went, people, the workers in the stores, the customers, the people on the street were all wearing masks. And I talked to somebody in the hotel about that. I don't think he was a manager, but he said that when this started, their business disappeared. And they, led by their business community and led somewhat by the local government, made a decision that, number one, their entire economy was based on tourism. And they had lost the cruise business. That's gone. No telling when it'll come back. But they started doing things to make it much safer there. And people started coming back. And it is the lowest COVID numbers in the country for a city anywhere near that size or bigger. So it can be done. It just takes a concentrated effort. Anyway, that's my comment. So,
thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would like to add that I don't like some of the things that we have available to us any more than many of you. As I shared earlier this year when we put other measures in place, that it was one of the hardest decisions that I have had to make, certainly as a commissioner, but in my professional career, and personally, understanding that some of the decisions that we were making were either causing hardship immediately or would eventually cause hardship. We have very limited tools available to us, and I certainly appreciate everyone who has made their voice heard. Certainly during the start of this, and even in my absence when I was gone for surgery, and even since my virtual return, and I do look forward to being back there in person with everyone. But these are not easy decisions. And certainly some folks have voiced their opinion, which they're totally entitled to do, and I will always support. And some even disparaging remarks and challenging the character of all of us on the court. That's totally your prerogative to do that. I think as we move forward, though, it's helpful when folks are willing to come to the table and offer reasonable solutions and understand that even with one solution, it can cause, 10 other consequences that we don't know right now or that we have yet to realize. And so all of that gets considered. And even as folks have have contacted my office, have talked with me or my staff, and folks who have come to court week after week, know that I certainly am open to a conversation about what possible solutions are, and have been a very vocal advocate for us providing as many opportunities as possible for folks to share their thoughts, their concerns with our court. That was made very clear this summer, and that remains in place. I don't repeat it every single week after week. That I want to see us provide as many opportunities for folks to share their concerns And while I certainly understand that I'm one of 5 on this court, that I was elected and duly sworn to represent Precinct 2, and I certainly will continue to do that in hearing what Precinct 2 constituents as well as other stakeholders within the county have to say about these issues. Again, and not to belabor the point, these are not easy decisions. We're doing the best with what we currently have available to us. And I understand that some folks may not think or believe that it's our responsibility to care for the health and well-being of the residents of this county, but that actually is our responsibility. And so every Tuesday and every day in between, but certainly every Tuesday, when I say here at the court, I bring to that the experience of being an emergency medical technician, of being a pre-med biology major and focused on science, of having family members who've had COVID, of doing the best to protect my staff and everyone who works for the county, in addition to all of the residents. And so, you know, I know certainly for the most recent weeks that many of you have come very regularly, and you're obviously very committed to showing up and making your voice heard. You have not heard much from me. I want to make sure that we're providing the most time for you all to share your concerns with us. But I wanted to be sure, especially as we are moving forward with this vote regarding these measures, just to know that you can always feel free to reach out directly to my office and we can have conversations about these issues. Then moving forward, though, that I will always do what I understand based off of the information that I have at the time and the power that is given to me in this elected office, to do what's in the best interest of the greatest number of people, realizing that there will be some folks who will bear more consequence than others. I wish they weren't that way, but unfortunately it is. So that's what I have to share for now.
Thank you, Commissioner. I guess one of the things that I would just say to that is from the very beginning, I have tried to collaborate and to listen to not only our medical community, but also our cities, our schools, our hospital CEOs, businesses. Many individuals I know come here and I do hear what they have to say. I have, I believe, an even larger number of people who I communicate with outside of this formal court, which do indicate positions opposite from what the folks that come in here oftentimes express. When asked, would I like for them to come down here, I plead with them not to, just simply from the standpoint that I tell them I appreciate very much their advice and their opinions, just as though I listen to the ones that come here to court on every Tuesday. We're constantly learning new information. It has changed. It goes back and forth almost daily. Certainly since March, we've changed positions, and we were told early on by the medical community that as we learn more, we will better know how to treat it, how to work with it, and how to help people with it. We, as I believe Mr. Manias mentioned a few minutes ago, we did 26,000 tests. In the beginning, we were lucky if we did 1,000. So I do believe that has caused those positive numbers to go up, but I have never used the positive cases to gauge what I had recommended that we do. I've heard many people say everyone is wearing masks. Trust me, when I go someplace, I look and I can tell you that there are certain places where few, if any, are wearing masks. My priority at the beginning, my priority at the middle, my priority now is to keep the hospitals open, and to keep businesses open. I am greatly concerned about the mental health. I am greatly concerned by the domestic violence, by the suicides, by child abuse. I talk every week, and the commissioners are on those calls too. I don't want to imply that it's just me. They're on those calls with me. They're told they can't speak because of open meeting requirements. But let me just assure you that every one of them are as focused and as involved as they can be. But ultimately, when it comes to the orders, that ultimately falls to me to do that. I know right now we're talking about the emergency declaration, but without the emergency declaration, I cannot issue the orders. And so I am very supportive of extending this declaration of emergency from now until February the 28th. And somebody says, well, why so long? We could, if everything turned around tomorrow, as a court, we could end the declaration of emergency. So the date is a date. If the court chooses to do this and passes this now, then I will extend the mask order, which I currently have in place, through February the 28th. And again, I hope, and many of the folks who spoke today may not have had an opportunity to update their comments based upon what the district attorney has said, but I think they were very clear in what orders I have in place and what authority I have and what orders and authority the governor has. And again, both in the governor's situation as well as in mine, I cannot do anything that the governor precludes me from doing. The governor can issue orders, but neither he nor I can enforce those orders. The enforcement comes from law enforcement. And what I am going to try to do as we go forward from here is to try to stay in my lane as much as possible. And by that I mean I'm not going to try to speculate on what I would do or might do, because I think it confuses folks. And so what I'm going to try to do, and I'm going to ask my friends in the media, even though I know you have, by earlier comments, you're bought by somebody. I don't know who it is, but I'm going to be interested in knowing when we meet out here in a minute. But what I'm going to try to do is not get drawn over into the what if category or what would I like to do. I want to stay focused on what I can and what I've done, and then let those other folks, whether it be the governor, whether it be law enforcement, whether it be other folks, comment on what they are going to do if they can. Because I think we have confused folks in the past by me getting outside of my lane. So with that, if there's no other comments or questions at this time, then I'm going to call the vote on the extension of the declaration of emergency through February the 28th. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Now with that, I have extended my order through February the 28th, and GK, I believe what you're looking for is
this on item number 3. All we're asking, if you've executed that order, we ask that the court receive and file the document in order to get it into the official record.
Well, do you have it? Does my office? I need to basically sign something, I guess. And it's probably somewhere on my desk. So I guess what I might ask is, Rachel, if you could go back there and good luck in trying to find it, Or do you have a copy of it there?
I think that we'll wait till you get the one from the judge's office.
Well, why don't we wait till we get the one that they make sure they're okay with? Okay, we'll just, if we could, can we just recess for about?
We can either do that or we can continue to go through the agenda and come back to this item. Whatever you'd like to do, Your Honor.
Why don't we recess for just a few minutes?
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. Okay, I have now signed the extension of the business mask order, and so I will ask that the court receive and file that.
Move to receive and file the signed extension to the emergency declaration. I think I said that right. Okay.
No, that is not going to be the motion because we've already done the extension. What we're doing is we're asking that you receive and file the executive order of County Judge Whitley.
Okay, so I correct that then. So move to receive and file the executive order.
I'll second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And members of the court, we've already given the executed document to the clerk's office at this time. One final thing before I step down, there is when it gets to the claims, we have, in addition to the claims, also another file that was handed out during court. So when we get to that point, we want to make sure that we approve the claims and all in the two extensions.
That's good to me.
Don't let us.
Before we, let me get where I'm at.
Okay, the auditor's office.
Auditor's report.
Yes.
We're required to present, and the court governing body is required to review and receive and hopefully approve the county's investment policy once a year. The state legislators did not meet, therefore there are no changes. It's the exact same policy as last year, but I present it for your review and approval.
I move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Move to receive and file personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion to second, receive and file the personnel agenda. Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We have one additional item that's the approval of a change to a project position assignment. This is a public health position, and they are requesting the change of duties. This position was established in 2015, and it's no longer needed to do those duties, and they want to update those duties.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
I'd also like to give you all a quick update on annual enrollment. It did conclude, and this year was much smoother than it was last year. The PEBC, Dolores, was able to get the packets out well in advance, which allowed our employees and the retirees especially to come in not en masse, and those that wanted to come in were able to come in and spread out over a lot more days. So that helped us with social distancing and the managing of the crowds. We are working on getting our final spouse forms and opt-outs, and we got no complaints from any employees or retirees this year. So that was wonderful, and we just wanted to give you a little update on that. Thank you.
I will say that I hadn't received any complaints either, so kudos to everyone involved for a smooth process this year.
Thank you.
Mr. Mays, I think Vinny is still.
I'll do those real quick.
Okay.
Members of the court, if we could go to public health under H1, we're requesting that the commissioners court approved the submittal of a grant application to the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services for funding of the Community Youth Development Program.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Finally, members of the court, on item number 2, we're requesting that the court approve an agreement with eClinical Works for on-site consultation in relation to the implementation of a cloud-based electronic medical records and practice management system to be used by the Public Health Department to support the COVID-19 mass immunization effort.
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Bachon?
Is it
1,051?
52.
52.
Deuce County.
And then some, I think. We have 2 items, bid award recommendations for your consideration today. Our first item is in regards to RFP 2020-181. It's for video directly observed therapy for the Public Health Department. Recommendation will be to award per the terms of contract, awarding to Amocha Mobile Health Incorporated. If approved, we're also seeking contract approval from the court.
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Second and last item is a bid award recommendation for RFP 2020-191. This is our contract for hazardous materials emergency response, remediation services, and waste disposal. Recommendation is to be awarded per the terms of the contract, awarding to the primary, secondary, and alternate vendors as shown in your court communique. Last year's expenditures were approximately $6,600. This is a what-if contract in case we need it.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. You'll have to come back for us to abuse you.
I didn't get that part. What was that, Judge?
I just said you had to come back for me to be able to abuse him every once in a while. Commissioner Johnson.
Has this interlocal been approved by the DA's office?
Yes. I'm sorry.
Yes, Commissioner.
Move approval of item 8, K, 1, A, and B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Are there any appointments?
I've got one. I'm sure there's more, but I appoint myself, Gary Fickus, to TIF Board 10, the Lone Star Cabela's TIF. That's an informative motion.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Before we close, we do have one audience participation.
Claims and addendum?
No, I don't want to do those.
Okay.
It's not payday this week. It's not payday till we just got past payday, so we can wait. You have the claims and the addendum in front of you?
There were two addendums.
Addendums.
Move approval of claims and the 2 extensions.
Second. We have motion second. Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. I have a request to do an audience participation for Doug Hines. Is Doug still here? This was in addition to his request earlier. Is Doug? I go to the room. Okay. Look like he's here.
Mr. Hines left, Judge.
Okay. Then with that, we will recess. Having returned from our closed meeting and there being no business to conduct at this time, we are adjourned. Is she ready?
I'll vote for that.
We have all three.
Thank you, Commissioner.